हेलो एस्पिरेंट्स, आप सबको पता है कि सीसैट हैज बिकम अ बैरियर जिस वजह से बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स प्रीलिम्स क्लियर नहीं कर पा रहे हैं। सो इसी प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने के लिए वी आर ब्रिंगिंग दिस वन स्टॉप सॉल्यूशन विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इंग्लिश कॉम्प्रिहेंशन, जहां ऋषि सर हु हैज बीन कैट टॉपर एंड हैज अ एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ 10 years ऑफ टीचिंग वुड बी हेल्पिंग यू टू कवर इंग्लिश कॉम्प्रिहेंशन इन अ वेरी क्रिस्प एंड कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव वे। फर्स्ट हाफ में ऋषि सर ने कॉन्सेप्ट्स डिस्कस किए, जहां इन्फ्रेंस, कंक्लूजन कैसे डिराइव करना है, इस रिलेटेड जो सारे कॉन्सेप्ट्स है इंग्लिश के वो डिस्कस किए हैं। सेकेंड हाफ में ही हैज डिस्कस्ड क्वेश्चंस एंड जो भी उन्होंने कॉन्सेप्ट डिस्कस किए हैं उसका एप्लीकेशन करके दिखाया है। सो इफ यू वॉच दिस कंप्लीट वीडियो, जो इंग्लिश कॉम्प्रिहेंशन के 27 क्वेश्चंस आते हैं वो आप इजीली टैकल कर पाओगे एंड सीसैट वुड नॉट बिकम अ बैरियर। सो ये मेरा रिक्वेस्ट है कि ये वीडियो आप कंप्लीटली देखिए अगर आपका सीसैट प्रॉब्लम है। सेकेंडली, अगर आपको ये वीडियो अच्छा लगता है एंश्योर कीजिए कि वीडियो को लाइक कीजिए एंड अगर आपको क्वांट रिलेटेड सिमिलर वीडियो चाहिए तो कमेंट सेक्शन में क्वांट लिखिए। We've also uploaded 12 hours current affairs marathon and IRL mapping marathon on our YouTube channel. Go check it out. It has helped many students clear the GS part also. And one more thing, अगर आपको इस वीडियो के जो conceptual related part के notes चाहिए, मैंने description में एक link डाला है, आप वहां जाके उसको access कर सकते हो। Hope you watch this complete video and cross the barrier of prelims and write mains this year. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to this video where we are going to look at CSAT English concepts and some question types and the tricks. Okay, so my name is Rishi and I'm here to guide you for the last mile prep that you require in next 15 days for your CSAT exam. So let's get into the agenda. So what are we going to see today is, first I'm going to discuss what is this video about, then about me, like why would you listen to me, right? Who am I? So I'll tell you a little more about myself. Then we'll look at some concepts. I have gone through the past year question papers of last 10 years and I have figured out some of the concepts that are very much required. So we're going to discuss that. And then we are going to look at some of the question types. And lastly, I'm going to give you a pro tip. You are writing an exam, know how the examiner is going to set that exam. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek into the examiner's mindset. Okay, so let's get into it. So what is this video? This is the only video that you will require to go through all the concepts and the question types that you may require to crack the CSAT English exam. You don't have to go through the pain of looking at the previous year questions. So I have gone through it and I am giving you all the insights that you need to crack the entrance exam, right? One of the pro tip, watch till the very end, is because that's when I'm going to tell you how examiners are going to set their questions, right? All right. So why should you listen to me? So you know, I am someone who walks the talk. So I have been writing entrance exams in India for past couple of years. These are the scores, as you can see. I have been consistently scoring 99 percentile in CAT, XAT, IFT, MBA, and various other entrance exams. So you can see that I know a little bit about how to crack entrance exam. So I guess I can help you in that regards at least. All right. So with that, a little bit of introduction about myself and what is this video about. Let's get cracking. So what is an argument? Okay. So always remember that anyone who is writing a piece of paragraph is not writing just for the sake of writing, right? A piece of paragraph is usually a form of expression. So what happens is sometimes author wants to convey some idea to their readers, right? And there is a typical way in which they write. And the most popular, or rather the only way that people write is, all right, so they will first give you the premise, okay? And then they will give you the conclusion. Okay, so this is how typically a paragraph or a passage is written, right? Now, what is a premise? Premise is basically anything that is either factual or incidental or some evidence that is presented to support the conclusion. So premise will always support the conclusion, right? If the premise are strong enough, your conclusion can be drawn in a very strong manner. If premise are not so good, chances are your conclusion will not be good. I'll give you a very funny and simple example, right? Suppose if I come and tell you, right, if I tell you Narendra Modi is the best Prime Minister of India, right? Now that's my conclusion, right? Now, would you just agree to me if I say that? Chances are no. Suppose if I tell you, I like Narendra Modi because I like his beard. Now that is a very weak reasoning, right? So the premise that I am giving is about his beard, right? So that doesn't make a good reason, right? So that is not a very strong link between a premise and a conclusion. On the other hand, if I tell you I like Prime Minister Modi because the way he is conducting the G20 summit is commendable. Now, this is something that at least I can defend with the facts, with the evidence, with some of the anecdotes, some verbatims. I can produce something in order to kind of support my conclusion, right? So whatever is if you have a very strong link between your premise and the conclusion, your argument is strong. If it's a weak link, your argument is weak. And most of the time, or rather always, the link is the assumption, right? So this is the familiar word. You might have been solving some assumption questions. So I'll explain that in detail as well. But your premise, your conclusion, and something that is unwritten, which is an assumption, this whole is basically called as argument, right? Now, always remember, assumption will never be stated in the passage. So if you are going to solve a question where they are asking which of the following could be an assumption, chances are whatever is the answer is not written in the passage. So if there is any line that is given as it is from the passage as an option, that is not your assumption. Conclusion, on the other hand, will always be given in the passage, or can be kind of, you can reword it, paraphrase it. Premise will always be given in the passage. Assumption, by definition, is you assume something. That means you don't have to explicitly state it, right? I am recording this video in English. Did I explicitly say I'm going to do it? No, because I assume that you might know English or you might understand the English language, right? So that's how the assumption is. This is something at the back of my mind. This is not explicitly written in the argument. So let's look at some of the concepts in this. Okay, so logic is basically logical reasoning, is a typical topic that you come across when it comes to reading comprehension in CSAT. So logic is the science that evaluate our arguments. So that's the whole and soul of what we are going to do when we solve the comprehension questions. An argument, as I just discussed, it's a group of statement with one particular conclusion and many premises. A statement is a sentence. It can be true, it can be false. You know, it can be a judgment, it can be an inference, it can be an opinion, it can be anything. A premise, as I just mentioned, it's kind of a evidence, supporting detail, facts, anything that supports your conclusion. And conclusion is the main idea, or whatever that the author wants to convey, right? So let's look at one by one. So what is a conclusion? Now, conclusion is most probably a statement of opinion, a judgment, right? Suppose if I say Rishi is a good student versus Rishi is a student. Now, when I say Rishi is a student, that becomes a fact. That's a premise, right? When I say Rishi is a good student, that's my opinion, right? So usually your opinions will have a bias, something that author really wants you to kind of understand, or something that one idea that author wants to convey. So that usually is a judgment. So a pro tip, look for adjectives. Most of the time adjectives are used in order to identify an opinion of a person, right? So the information, facts, evidence, argument, that is statement of passage, are called the premises. Everything else, that is opinion and all, will be basically called conclusion. So please understand, premises can be many, conclusion will always be only one in a particular paragraph, right? Now it must be logically derived from the given statements, not to mention, and at the same time, please understand, you are not allowed to use any knowledge outside of that passage in order to draw a conclusion, okay? So whatever is your conclusion has to be part of the passage and has to be drawn from what is given in the passage only, right? So let's see an example, okay? So suppose my example is, I have an exam tomorrow that I have been preparing for a long time, but I don't have any pen to write the exam. Then we can conclude that I will either buy or borrow a pen tomorrow, right? So we concluded that. It's not an inference, right? It's not even an assumption. It's a conclusion. You have a set of facts, a situation is given to you. Based on that, you are concluding that probably you will have to buy or borrow a pen tomorrow. Right? Now, again, a pro tip, if you come across words like hence, so, therefore, chances are they are the statements of conclusion, right? And always ask the question why till you get the answer. Okay, keep asking the question why is the author saying that, why is it that he is writing something like that. The moment you start asking why again and again and again, chances are you will land to a conclusion. So we'll look at some examples like that. Now some of you might ask, sir, I understand now what is conclusion, but what is an inference, right? And inference are something that is most predominantly asked in your CSAT exam. So I'll tell you what is the difference between inference and conclusion. Okay, but let's just understand what is an inference first. So inference, just like conclusions, are derived using facts, evidence, observation, and we deduced it given the situation in the passage. But here we are allowed to use our prior knowledge. We are allowed to use a knowledge which is not given in the passage, something that is generalized in nature. So if you find out something that is true based on your knowledge as well as the what is given in the passage, if you combine these two, whatever you conclude is generally your inference. So what is a thin line between a conclusion and an inference? Conclusion is basically what that is given in the passage. That is what author wants you to convey. Inference is what actually conveyed by the reader. Now, what actually conveyed to the reader can as well be the conclusion given by the passage, or it can be the conclusion of the passage plus some my worldview or my notion of my knowledge of that particular topic. If I combine the two, that will be an inference. So please understand, conclusion is always from the author's point of view. Inference is always from the reader's point of view. So conclusion will be given by the author. Inferences will be drawn by the reader. Now, if the inference drawn by the reader and the conclusion drawn by the author, if there are overlapping, chances are that author has done a brilliant job in writing that piece of paragraph. If there is a mismatch, or rather you can infer a lot of more things than what is given in the passage, chances are there are some disconnect in what author wants to say versus what readers are getting inferred, right? So let's see an example. If a stray dog run towards you with his teeth out, growling and barking, then you would probably infer that the dog is about to attack you, right? Now you inferred that. How did you infer? Because you have seen such attacks before, or maybe you have experienced it before. I assume none of you have done that, but maybe you have seen that before, or you kind of experienced that before, right? So you used the situation plus your prior knowledge to come to an inference. So what is your inference? Oh, chances are he is going to attack me now. So that's your inference, right? So it could be your observation, as I said, or your past experience. It may or may not be true. Please understand. Conclusion has to be true 100% based on the passage. Inferences may or may not be true, right? Inferences can be, you can draw your inferences based on some stereotypes as well, right? So they cannot be validated as easily as the conclusions can be, right? So what is the difference between conclusion versus inference? So unlike conclusions that are logically derived, inference are more in nature of an educated guess. So as I said, conclusion, what is given in the passage; inference, what you understand of the passage plus your worldview around that topic, what is given in the passage. Combine the two, you get an inference. You just look at what author is trying to say, you get a conclusion, right? Now, so here is a little generalized example that I want to give you, okay? So suppose, let's look at this. So say there are three statements in a passage A, B, C, okay? Now A, B, C plus logic will give you conclusion, something that is already given by the author in the passage, right? Now if I only use A plus my logic, that is an inference, right? So I am using a piece of information from the passage. It may not be the full passage, just let's say the first sentence of the passage. I take that sentence, I apply my logic to it, my knowledge to it, my worldview to it. Whatever I get is an inference, right? Conclusion is what is given by the author. So it has to be combination of everything that is written in the passage. So that's the difference between a conclusion and an inference. So again, conclusion can only be one, inferences can be many. You can draw as many inferences, as many according to the statements that are given in the passage, right? Now ABC plus logic is equal to conclusions, and that may also lead to an inference, right? So both can be possible. You can just take one statement and draw an inference based on that, or you can take the whole passage and then draw a conclusion and from that you can draw an inference. So anything is possible. So suppose x implies y and y implies z, then that means x implies z. So basically x implies y and y implies z. That means what you can imply, you can say that x implies z. So that is usually an inference, right? Right. So always understand an inference can never be a direct line from the given passage. Whenever you are solving an inference based question, please understand if there is any option that is the restatement of what is already given in the passage, chances are that is not your answer, right? Inferences is basically read between the lines. It's an old wisdom. You might have heard it from many people, read between the lines. That's exactly how you draw the inference. You read, but you also apply your own mind, your outside knowledge to that, and you get an inference, right? Right. So conclusion versus inference, we have understood that. We'll just see one real life example. India has fought many wars with Pakistan and China. There are frequent skirmishes and tensions even now on India's northern borders. The exact border line is often challenged by the parties involved. Lack of properly demarcated border is also an issue with the Bangladesh. Now that is the whole paragraph. It's an easy to read paragraph. I hope you understand what is written. Now what is the conclusion? Relations between India and Pakistan, India, China are probably not good, or India, Pakistan and India, China are enemies, at least on the military front. Now this I can definitely infer based on what is given in the passage, right? Or you can say this could be the next line that the author wants to write. Maybe that is the reason why he is discussing all of these things. Now what is an inference? Unclear borders may lead to unhealthy relationship with neighbors. Now you understand, your inferences are more generalized in nature, right? It may not be specific to the topic given, but it's just taking one particular statement regarding the unclear borders. If you see, the exact border line is often challenged by parties. It's just taking that line, and based on that I am adding my own knowledge. Maybe I know that some other countries are also facing the same challenges when it comes to borders. So I am kind of drawing an inference based on one line. Understand, not the full paragraph, just one line from the paragraph and my own knowledge. Combine that and I get an inference. Conclusion, if you see, I have to use everything that is given in the paragraph. Then only I can draw a conclusion, right? So that's the difference. How do you differentiate whether the question is asking conclusion versus inference? So usually, which of the following statement can you infer from the passage? Which of the following statements can you conclude from the passage? So this is how they differentiate an inference based question versus a conclusion based question. But an inference question can also be considered as what inference can you draw from the line, from and whatever is the particular line. Again, as I said, inference can be drawn from a particular piece of statement. It doesn't have to be necessarily from the whole paragraph, right? So I guess this much knowledge is enough for you to understand what is the difference between conclusion and inference. At least on the basic level, at least on the foundational level, you know how to differentiate the two. One thing I forgot to mention, don't worry about this document. I'm going to share this document in the description, so you'll get the link. So you don't have to make notes or take screenshots. You will get this document, right? Now, there are some questions that I saw where they asked which of the following can be implied, rather which of the following can be inferred, right? So what is the difference between imply question versus an inference question? Okay. So to imply, it means that something is hinted or suggested by the author. It is not said directly, right? So author, you don't say anything, but you say a lot of things at the same time, right? It's kind of that. You are implying something. Inference, you can deduce from the evidence or facts given in the passage, right? So to imply is more assertive. It has more active tone than drawing inference. When an author implies something, then he is giving you hidden or indirect hints, right? Something that author is not saying, but somewhere he is also saying that, right? Rather than stating something explicitly. While an inference is something you understand or deduce after you apply the logic to the given facts and evidence. You understand the inference by now, right? So an author implies and the reader infers. Again, implications or implies are from author's point of view. Inferences are from a reader's point of view. A person who implies is giving information while a person who infers is receiving the information. I hope by now you understand. Okay, so what is an example? When his boss said that there are going to be some expenditure cuts in coming months, he just implied that some useless expenses will be reduced. However, Mac inferred that it is a sign of impending layoffs, right? So boss just came and made a statement that there could be some budget cuts in the coming few months. Now, what is it that boss implied? Boss may very well have employed with maybe noble intention that there is actually a budget cut. Maybe some of the expenses will be reduced. What is it that an employee inferred? Or maybe my job is in danger. Maybe I am at a risk of a layoff, right? So that's the difference between what you imply versus what you infer, right? So I hope by now you understand what is inference, what is implication or imply, and what is the conclusion. Now let's look at the link that joins a premise and a conclusion, which is an assumption. Okay. Now again, assumption, as I said, it's not stated in the passage. So assumptions are something that we have already learned or experienced and do not question. So something that we already know or we assume. I assume you know something, so I don't necessarily feel it to be mentioned while doing a conversation, right? They may be a part of our beliefs, and we may interpret everything else assuming our beliefs to be true. So they are a kind of prism through which we see the world around us. Same is true for an author who writes a RC passage. So again, it's preconceived notion, something that you know at the back of your mind, right? A leftist person will try to find economic causes for all the problems in the world, while a religious person may assume that everything happens due to the will of the God. Okay, so that is an assumption. You know how a leftist would assume versus you know how a religious person would assume. Okay, don't get me wrong here. Okay, this is just my understanding of how leftists think. So if there are any leftists, don't get offended. Okay. While we make conclusions and inferences based on facts, evidences, or observations, assumptions are things that we presume or presuppose and take for granted. Something that I don't think is needed to be explicitly mentioned. I am assuming something is true and I'm just moving on, right? So again, it's not definitely mentioned in the passage. Okay. So let's look at an example. If you see anyone sad, you can infer that person must be having problems in his life, right? You have inferred it using your observation by seeing the gloom on his face. However, if you think that he must be sad because of financial issue or relationship issues, then this is your assumption. So he is sad is your inference. He is sad because of financial condition is your assumption. Or he is sad maybe because some family issue. So that becomes your assumption. Okay. So probably because you have had been sad or depressed due to these reasons in the past, you believe that that person may also be sad for the same reason. So that's an assumption. Okay. So usually, as I said, assumption plus facts, or basically facts is basically premise. So your assumption plus premise is basically the conclusion of the author. So assumption is the base. It is the base for any critical message that author wants to give. Earlier, CSAT used to have some questions. Nowadays, they are not asking. But earlier, in case the questions get asked, something like which of the following would strengthen the argument, which of the following would weaken the argument, chances are you have to first identify the assumption, and whichever option strengthens your assumption strengthens the argument, whichever option weakens your assumption weakens the argument. So you can understand how assumption is important in that regard, right? So sometimes the question will not mention the words conclusion, inference, or assumption explicitly, but you can sense them by the language of the question. Now, what is the language? Suppose if the statement abouts are true, which of the following statement must be true? Now, these are inference or conclusion questions. The above information supports which of the following assertions? Again, inference or a conclusion question. Select the belief system on which the argument provided in the passage depends. That is an assumption, right? What is the foundation of that passage, or what is the base of that passage? Those kind of questions will most probably be your assumptions. Okay. Now another question that we usually see is critical message or crux of the passage kind of a question. So let's just understand. Now what is crux? Crux of the passage is the main idea that author is trying to convey, right? Why is he writing something that he is writing? What is it that compelled him to write? Right? Nobody writes for the sake of writing. They want to convey some idea to the reader, right? So that usually is crux of the passage. most of the time that is given in the passage, sometimes that is not given in the passage. So you will have to kind of understand where to draw the line. So it is the most critical or the most crucial message that author is trying to convey, right? Now, as per the dictionary, not as per the me, as per the dictionary, the crux is the most important or a difficult part of a problem, something that you need your most focus on. That is usually the crux, the core of the message, right? So while to draw a conclusion, we all use the information provided in the passage. To find the critical message, we ignore all the minor points and focus only on the most significant point, right? So sometimes you one of the key ways in identify how to find the crux of the passage, you kind of ignore the premises and focus on conclusion. Anything that is opinionated or a judgment based statement that is given in the passage, chances are if you just kind of keep those in mind and based on that if you come up with some particular crux of the passage, that would most probably be true. If there are some evidence, some data points, some witnesses, or some piece of information that supports your conclusion, that generally will not help you find what is the crux of the passage. That generally is just the details to support the crux of the passage. So if you want, again, a pro tip, if you find the crux of the passage, look for the statements of judgments, look for adjectives, something that author wants to conclude, right? Those will most probably form the crux of the passage, right? So what is the difference between conclusion and crux of the passage? As I said, conclusion, it has to consider the premise, the assumption, and linking the two will give you a conclusion. You take the opinionated statement from the passages, you just kind of process that, and chances are you will get crux of the passage. There is a fine line between conclusion and crux, and I'm not really sure that there have been passages where they ask either of the two. Either the questions are conclusion based questions or the questions are crux of the message, crux of the passage type of a question. So chances are, if you most of the time you use the same technique to solve both the questions, and chances are you will get the right answer. Okay. So implication we already discussed. So this is just an extra piece of information for implications. I'll give you this information in the form of PDF, right? And again, a rarely used question, corollary based question, right? So what is a corollary? Corollary is basically what is the immediate consequence of something, right? So in math it is used very extensively, right? Is used most formally to describe a new proof or proposition that follows naturally from the established one. So you know something, or passage has given you some conclusion, or maybe some incidents that passage has given you. What is it that can immediately follow after that? All right. So suppose maybe there is an attack on the convoy, for example, in some area in India. What is the immediate consequence? The corollary of that is chances are an army will be deployed, or maybe the police force will be deployed, right? So that is the natural consequence of something. So that usually is called the corollary. Now, I'll give you one example, okay? Global trade negotiations are now eyeing the digital area in an attempt to preemptively colonize it. Big data is freely collected or mined from developing countries like India and converted into digital intelligence in developed countries. So this is a passage that is warning basically that look how data is getting collected and how developed countries are using it. Now, what would be the corollary of that? So the corollary of that would be India should be careful to protect his digital sovereignty in global trade talks. So basically now India, so this was a warning, right? This was a warning, and this is a next step of action that becomes a corollary. So in a layman term, corollary is something that you will immediately do once you know what is given in the passage. So you get that piece of information. What is it that you would do right after that? That usually is corollary, right? Now let's come to the last bit of this video. I told you the pro tip, the examiner mindset. But before that, I hope by now you have understood the different types of the questions and the concepts behind those questions. Go through this PDF once again and maybe kind of understand these concepts and nuances in that. maybe rewatch this video if you haven't understood anything, and chances are you will be good. There is another video which will be a little longer one where I'm going to solve only questions. So I'm going to solve so many questions in that. If you just watch that video, and I'm going to use the same concepts that I used in this video. So if you just watch that video, chances are you will be good for your CSAT exam. Okay. Now a pro tip, right? So understand what is the skill of solving. See, say there's something reading, you have to read and then you have to solve. That is typically what is involved in the English question, right? Now reading, I'm not really worried about, because now is not the time to discuss reading. We only have 15 days left, right? So now is not the time I tell you how to read and all, because that may require some time. And chances are you by now have practiced enough about reading, right? What I'm going to focus on is what is the solving part of it, right? So imagine if I ask you to create a question of CSAT English, what is it that you will do, right? Or assume what is the question setter will do. First, he will take a passage, right? Okay, he is writing a piece of blog, let's say. He liked that blog, he took out 2 paragraphs out of it, and now he decides that, okay, this is the paragraph I want to ask in CSAT. Now, what is it that he would do? He will first create a question, right? Now, that is not that relevant a skill for us, okay? We don't really need to worry about what questions is going to be asked, okay? Then what will he do? He will work a correct answer, right? Because chances are he knows what the answer is, right? So he will first create that option. Now, that comes under art of reading, okay? That comes under art of reading. So I leave it to you to read the passage, and chances are you would know what is true as per the passage. So whatever is true, 100% true based on the passage, chances are that will be your correct answer, right? Now something that he does, and which is the most crucial thing, is then he creates the incorrect answers, right? And that, my friend, is what I am talking about, the skill of solving, right? Knowing how the incorrect questions are formed. Okay. So I'll give you a little bit of sneak peek into how a question setter would set that. Okay. Now, he has created a question. Whatever is your answer has to be true based on your passage. So your answer is definitely true based on the passage. Then there is something which is false as per the passage, right? Now that is definitely not an answer, right? So that you can understand. You have read the passage, you have understood it, you know what is not given in the passage or what is not said in the passage. So figuring out what is true as per the passage and figuring out what is the false as per the passage, that is fine. But so this is the band, for example, this is the leftmost part is something that is true, the rightmost part is something that is false. You can identify this, you can identify this. What you, all of you or most of you would be struggling is what is there in the middle, right? Something is true, a little bit true, you feel, oh, this is partially true, you're unsure as to whether you mark or not, or something like that. These are the uncertain options, right? Now, these uncertain options are what create problem for us, right? So suppose your answer is somewhere here, right? Now this is almost true, but you feel something is not right in that. So this is partially true, right? Now please understand, whatever is partially true is partially false, and whatever is partially false is completely false. Okay, so your answer has to be only here. Rest all this part is basically incorrect answer. Okay, whatever is your answer, it has to be here and only here and not anywhere else, right? And your anything else is your incorrect answer. Now why am I telling you this? Now that forms the strategy. When it comes to English questions in CSAT, don't try to find the right answer. Rather try and eliminate the wrong answers, because probability of finding the wrong answer is very high rather than finding the right answer. So the moment you find a little bit of fault, even a one word that makes it partially incorrect, chances are it is completely incorrect. right? So that's how you create, that's how you look at the correct answer versus incorrect answer, and focus more on the option elimination rather than choosing. We don't do that in maths. Okay, maths we solve and we hunt for the correct answer. Exactly opposite of that you do in English. You read, you understand, now you find the faults in the option. So your by default response to an option is this option is incorrect. Unless you are completely convinced from that option that no, there is no fault in it, then only you change your conviction to correct. Okay. Now, how do these uncertain questions are formed? These uncertain questions are formed with a technique called BANE. Okay. So I'll give you a very small example. Suppose there is a passage that, let's say, talks about Mumbai. Okay. Mumbai in general, Mumbai life or something like that. Okay. Now, if an option is broad in nature, what is broad? Let's say passage is talking about Mumbai, the option is talking about Maharashtra. So your scope of the passage has been broadened. Now, Maharashtra might have been mentioned somewhere in the passage, okay, but it's not the main idea, or it's not the right answer most probably, right? So that's how you find the broad answer. You take the scope of the passage and you broaden it. That's how you figure out, that's how you create an incorrect answer. What is the other way you create an incorrect answer? Alien. Now, what is alien? Now, the passage is talking about Mumbai, the option is talking about Delhi. Now, Delhi might have been mentioned in the passage somewhere, but maybe it's just one of the supporting details or something like that, right? So, alien option is something that is not mentioned in the passage, or something that passage is not about. So, that's how they question setter create incorrect option. They introduce an alien object in the option choice. Then narrow. Now, what is narrow? Suppose the option is the passage is talking about Mumbai, the option is talking about, let's say, Andheri, which is one of the areas in Mumbai, right? So that is like narrowing the scope of the argument. Your passage is talking about Mumbai, you're talking about one narrow thing that is mentioned in the passage. So that's how they create the narrow option. And last, extreme. Now these are always a little easier to find. What is an extreme option? Extreme option is, suppose passage says that how Mumbai weather is better than other metro cities in India, right? So it's just saying that is the whole crux of the passage. Okay, the option is saying Mumbai weather is best in India. Now you understand how it is taking it to the extreme. My author has only said that how it is better than others, versus the option is saying how it is best, right? Now that is usually extreme. Now you understand how they create extreme options. You know, extreme options will have extreme words. So words like never, always, only, best, worst, right? Longest, shortest, something like that. These kind of words would most probably will not make up your answer. Not always, but most probably will not make up your answer. Okay. So these are some of the ways in which how question setter sets the incorrect option. So by now, I hope you might have understood what is it that is required to solve English CSAT English questions, and I have given you a small sneak peek into how question setter sets a question. Okay, so tune in for the next video where I am going to solve at least quite a few. I'm going to solve quite a few questions of English, and we'll cover all these concepts there. So thank you so much. Please do like.
हेलो एस्पिरेंट्स, जैसे कि आपको पता है यूपीएससी ने मेंस का रिजल्ट डिक्लेयर किया है एंड संकल्प मेंस बैच जो 2023 के स्टूडेंट्स थे, दे हैव डन अमेजिंगली वेल. We've already uploaded all the reviews of students जिन्होंने क्लियर किया है, बीट वैभव, ओशी, प्रगति, तेजस, शशांक हो गया, पार्थ, लाभ, इतने सारे स्टूडेंट्स ने संकल्प मेंस बैच के साथ मेंस को क्लियर किया है. दे विल बी गिविंग इंटरव्यू एंड द नंबर वन रीजन व्हाई संकल्प मेंस बैच हैज बीन सो इफेक्टिव इज बिकॉज इट फॉलोज द राइट प्रोसेस. जब प्रोसेस सही है ना, रिजल्ट आएगा. मैं हमेशा बोलता था संकल्प मेंस बैच स्टूडेंट्स को, इस प्रोग्राम में वी जस्ट डिड नॉट फोकस ऑन द टेस्ट सीरीज. टेस्ट सीरीज नेसेसरी है. इस प्रोग्राम में 12 टेस्ट विद इवैल्यूएशन है, बट वी फोकस्ड ऑन द कंप्लीट प्रोसेस. इसमें सबसे पहले हमने इंश्योर किया कि आपके कंटेंट पर फोकस किया जाए. हमने हर एक टॉपिक पर स्टूडेंट्स का ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग करवाया, क्योंकि एग्जाम में सोचना ही है. वो सोचने की प्रैक्टिस में हमने करवाई. उसके बाद जो भी टॉपिक मेंशन्ड है सिलेबस में विद रिस्पेक्ट टू मेन सिलेबस, वो सारे सिखाए. उसके अराउंड करंट अफेयर्स सिखाया एंड वी एंश्योर्ड कि वो खुद अपने नोट्स बनाए, क्योंकि नोट्स आर द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग. जितने भी आप 1000 टॉपर्स देख रहे हो उनके सबके नोट्स होते हैं. Without your own hand-written notes, you cannot clear mains examination. And we focus on the content part in a very rigorous way. उसके बाद आता है with respect to structuring of answers. हमने special sessions लिए with respect to toppers जिन्होंने गाइड किया. हर एक सब्जेक्ट के लिए उन्होंने एक स्पेसिफिक गाइडलाइंस दी, जैसे GS3 का आंसर्स कैसे लिखना है, GS2 के आंसर्स कैसे लिखना है, GS4 के आंसर्स कैसे लिखना है. हमने इस पर स्पेसिफिक फोकस दिया. एंड लास्ट में वी फोकस्ड ऑन प्रैक्टिस, जहां हमने डेली क्वेश्चंस प्रैक्टिस के लिए स्टूडेंट्स के लिए दिए. एंड वी टुक 12 टेस्ट व्हिच वर गिवन विद इवैल्यूएशन and along with personal mentorship. So it formed the complete process, and that is the reason why so many students could crack it through Sankalp Mains batch. It is not just a test series but a complete process. मैं चाहता हूं आप हमारा रिव्यू लीजिए. जितने भी स्टूडेंट्स का मैंने नाम लिया है या जितने भी स्टूडेंट्स ने संकल्प मेंस बैच लगाया है, आप उनसे रिव्यू लीजिए विद रिस्पेक्ट टू क्वालिटी, विद रिस्पेक्ट टू कंटेंट. यू विल रियलाइज इट्स अ वन स्टॉप सॉल्यूशन. इट इज नॉट जस्ट अ टेस्ट सीरीज but complete solution. So if you want to complete your mains preparation, then Sankalp is a one stop solution. To give you example of Abhishek sir, पिछले साल भी उन्होंने while working he joined Sankalp mains batch, could crack it with 242 rank, GS3 में highest number थे. इस साल फिर से उन्होंने Sankalp mains batch लिया था for revision and for updates. इस बार फिर से उनका इंटरव्यू कॉल आया है. I would like to tell you, एक बार आप हमारे जो स्टूडेंट्स क्वालिफाई किए उनके रिव्यूज देखिए. सेकेंडली हमारी क्वालिटी चेक कीजिए and you will see a difference in your preparation.
With that, let's start. By the way, most of the questions that I have taken in this video are based on environment, policy making, national policies, little bit of science and tech, some philosophy. It's a fair mix of the questions. So I have analyzed last 5 years of CSAT question papers. Time and again they have been asking more and more national policy based or environment based questions. So what I have done is the passages that I have chosen are also on the same lines. On the other hand, the type of questions that UPSC has been asking are more on the side like which of the following is crux of the passage, assumption made in the passage, or as simple as what is the pragmatic rational approach that should be taken in a situation. So all these questions also are on the similar lines so that we get a holistic preparation for the CSAT. Okay, so let us try and solve the first question. It says, it is said women hold up half the sky, yet barely 19% of Indian women of working age participated in the labor force in 21. So on one hand, author is saying that women hold half the sky, basically means 50%. However, only 19% of them are in the working age population. The question which must haunt India and its policymakers is, can a nation harness its potential when women stay out of the labor force? So this is where author is bringing you the question. This is where author, the direction in which author is taking the discussion. So author is basically concerned that how can an India or a nation like India grow if our women are not participating in the workforce. So I can expect that the next few lines would be dedicated to either elaborate this problem and maybe author will also provide a solution. So let's see what author is doing. The history of economic development is explicit about necessary and sufficient conditions for prosperity. No large economy has attained its level without the participation of women in the workforce. Female labor force participation rate in G7 countries range between 42 and 61%. India trail all its peers among the BRICS nation on female workforce participation rate. So author is not only giving you what is the India percentages, but also author is also trying to tell you that look at the countries similar to India and look at their percentages. And basically author is trying to prove that other countries are doing better. There is much lather about political empowerment of women, one facet being reservation of seats in parliament. Whether that alone will change the strange hold of circumstance is an open question. Okay. Now here is the thing. A lot of passages that I have seen in CSAT would be of two kinds. Kind one is whether author is just discussing the problem. So there is a problem that author feel that India is facing and author will elaborate on that problem. Then second kind of passages is author not only elaborates a problem but also provides a probable solution. Okay. So generally we are looking for only two things. Is author only discussing problem or is author discussing problem as well as solution? Now if you see passage paragraph 1, author was discussing the problem. He did not mention, he only mentioned that workforce participation of women is low. However, he did not mention how to improve it. Even second paragraph, okay, author is simply giving you numbers and comparison with other countries, but no apparent solution here. Statement paragraph 3 talks about solution which is already implemented. So this is not author's solution. This is the solution which is already implemented, and author says even that is not working. What solution is author talking about? Reservation of seats in parliament. And author says is an open question. So it's a question mark whether that will really improve or not. India has just had one woman PM and the current Lok Sabha has just over 75 women MPs. There is no disputing that social and economic conditions are a contributory factor. Clearly, the run-of-the-mill policies are not enough. By the way, run-of-the-mill policies is basically run-of-the-mill is basically saying that something that you do as a reactive measure. It's like so think of your health. You eat good food to have a better health. Okay, so that's like prevention. But in case if your health deteriorates, you take medicine. That's cure. So one is prevention in order to avoid getting bad health. And then in case you get bad health, you take medicines, which again you are doing to react to the bad health condition that you have. So author is saying run of the mill policies, meaning you're not run of the mill is basically cure. The damage is done. Now what is it that you are doing? So it's a reactive measure. Prevention is a proactive measure, and barely surviving and just reacting to the situation, or run of the mill measures are basically reactive in measure. So author is saying these are all reactive measures. These are not enough, and there is a need to install affirmative intervention. So now author is saying cure is not enough. Let's also think of prevention. There is merit in the argument that economic empowerment enables and propels political empowerment. Now, in all of this, as you have seen, author has not discussed any solution. Author has only discussed what is the problem. So, which of the following is essentially implied in the above passage? Let's look at it. Reservation of seats in Indian Parliament for women is needed for their economic empowerment. Actually, author is saying opposite. Author saying reservation of seats in Parliament, he is not sure whether it is useful or not, let alone leading it to empowerment. So A is not the answer. B. India has the lowest levels of female workforce participation rate in South Asia. South Asia. Now you understand the moment he said lowest, the option says lowest. That means it is last. Now author is not saying India is last. Author is saying India is lower in ranking than other. So whenever you have extreme words, only, always, best, worst, lowest, highest, these extreme words, generally they are not the answer, because the option is talking about what is given in the passage in an extreme manner. Now author may not be talking in that extreme manner, but this option is talking about in extreme manner. So again, the moment it says lowest, this is not the answer. C. Participation of women in the workforce is a necessary condition for prosperity. I guess this is what author would agree with. This is what he said in last line also, that if you need economic empowerment, if you need political empowerment, you need economic empowerment. And how do you get economic empowerment? You get women empowerment. So this makes sense. So let's keep it aside. India is expected to continue to have the largest number of women in working age population. Again, largest. Do we know it is largest? Do we know how other countries are performing when it comes to how much is the population of women? So we don't know that. Clear? So this is how you solve the reading comprehension passages. I hope this is helpful to you. Let me know in the comments if you feel this is fine, and do like the video and share it with your friends. Okay, next, pause the video, give it a try. Okay, globalization of culture. Sorry. Globalization of culture contributes to the exchange of cultural values of different countries and the convergence of traditions. Cultural globalization characterizes the convergence of business and consumer culture between the different countries of the world and growth of the international communication. On one hand, this leads to the promotion of individual national cultures around the world. On the other hand, the popular international cultural phenomena may displace national or turn them into international. So, author is not taking any stance. Author is talking about both the things. What is the globalization of culture advantage as well as disadvantage? He says on one hand, this leads to promotion of individual nation culture. So I can export my culture to other countries. So it's beneficial for me as a country. However, at the same time, other countries' culture will come into my country. In that case, my own culture might be replaced by the international culture. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, is what author is saying. You may have advantage, you may also have a disadvantage. Based on the passage above, the following assumptions have been made. Let me erase this. Cultural globalization can act as a double-edged sword for national culture. This is what I just said. Double-edged sword is basically, so the edge is on both sides. If the sword is going to attack the enemy, which is on that side, but the sword can also attack yourself because the edge is on this side as well. So it's a double-edged sword. So this is definitely what author is saying. Two, considering the diverse impact of cultural globalization, it is important to keep a check on mediums of exchange. See, author is not discussing any solution as to how you should manage cultural globalization. You need to understand, in this whole paragraph, author is only concerned about effects of globalization of culture, positive as well as negative effects. But did author say how to mitigate the negative effects or how to improve the positive effects? No, author is only telling you what is it that can happen if globalization of culture happens, right? Two, on the other hand, talks about what is the solution. How do you kind of improve the impact of globalization of culture, which by the way is not discussed in passage. Author has not discussed any solution as to how you should improve it. So in that case, I will mark one only as the answer. Many other government expenditures for the benefit of the privileged classes have escaped the purview of current debate. We are focusing only on expenditure that is either a subsidy going to the rich or is a wasteful. So basically, author says government expenditures are benefiting the privileged classes and they are escaping the purview of current debate. That means nobody is talking about it. So government's expenditure is benefiting the privileged class and nobody is talking about it. We are focusing only on expenditure that is either a subsidy going to the rich or is wasteful. For example, giving land to industries at a highly subsidized rate, writing off loans worth crores of rupees to industrialists, continuous rise in government expenditure on self-promotion, and huge sums spent on so-called development projects or beautification projects. Several tax exemptions and tax holidays too add to the problem of dwindling fiscal health. So author is basically critical of the government and how they are benefiting the already privileged class. Based on the passage above, the following assumptions have been made. Okay. Providing any freebie to marginalized section is the responsibility of the government. I see nothing about marginalized sections is mentioned in the paragraph. Author is saying that how government is benefiting the privileged class. That doesn't mean that author also means that government is not benefiting the marginalized class. That is not discussed anywhere. So I cannot conclude that which is not given in the passage. 2. Providing any freebie to the rich is not the responsibility of the district administration. I don't know whether it is not the responsibility or is the responsibility. Author is simply saying that government is providing subsidies to rich people. Now, is it a good thing, bad thing? Is it the responsibility of government? Author is not commenting on that. Assuming it is the responsibility of the government, author is simply saying that nobody is taking a look at it. Nobody is basically asking questions as to why you are providing subsidies of such a huge amount. So, in a way, think of it like this. Providing subsidies is good. Providing, let's say, 100 rupee worth subsidy is good. But providing 1000 rupee worth subsidy may be bad. But that doesn't mean that providing subsidy itself is bad. Okay. So, the quantum in which you are providing can be debatable. Author says that is not debatable. So, author is not against the subsidy per se. Author is against the amount that is spent on that and how it is benefiting the rich. So again, I cannot say that author is against the, or author is basically saying that it is the responsibility or not the responsibility of the government. So I don't think, I don't think any of the statements can be inferred. Okay. Let's go to next. Okay. Given that cities are concentrated centers of population and economic activities, any impact and disruption, whether natural or human induced, has the potential to affect vast numbers of people. So, author is saying cities are hubs where human density or population density is high. Anything that goes wrong there might affect the huge number of people. The expected impact of climate change poses a massive challenge to cities. These impacts will vary from city to city as well as within the city. For instance, coastal cities are vulnerable to rising sea levels, to more intense precipitation that increases the likelihood of flooding in low-lying areas, and landslides on steep slopes, and to extended heat waves that threaten cities to unaccustomed to very hot summers. So basically, author is saying any type of a season and at any geography in which that city resides might face problem. So a city like Mumbai might face the problem of rising sea levels. A city like, let's say, Hyderabad might see the extended heat waves, and then a city maybe in Uttarakhand may be accustomed to landslides. So think of it like this. So author is basically, no matter where is the geography, a geographical condition there which is affected by climate change might result in a let's say damage to the population in that city. In every city, the poorest populations are the most vulnerable because they have the least adaptive capacity and often occupy areas that are most exposed to hazards. Building resilience and adapting to climate change are therefore a high priority for cities. Yet, city managers and practitioners serving the urban poor often point out that the multiple competing priorities are challenging enough. Paying attention to uncertain future climate impacts is thus seen as a lower priority. So, author is saying that even if the city managers is the word he used. So think of it like municipal corporation or some government body which is responsible to maintain the livelihood in the city. Author is saying they are not taking this as a priority. What climate change and the impact it may have on the population. And the reason why they are not doing it is basically they are saying there are competing priorities. So think of it like this. So there is a city which is suffering from, let's say, bad roads. Okay. And at the same time, the city also has, let's say, problem of heat waves. Now, what do you think city managers will focus on? Will they focus on bad roads or will they focus on heat waves? Now, according to author, the city managers will focus on bad roads. Why? Because that is a priority for them and there is an immediate impact. So you improve the roads, public is immediately happy. Versus if you do something for heat waves, which is not affecting today, but which might affect 5 years later, City managers are like, why should I worry about 5 years later when I have an issue which has to be dealt now? So that's what author is saying, that there the climate change and its impact is quite lower in the priority for the city administration. With reference to the passage, suggest why climate change can be hazardous for cities. They are concentrated centers of population. That's what he has discussed. True. They are centers of economic activity. This is also what the author has discussed. So I guess 1 and 2 is fine. Okay. Give this one a try. Okay. So scholars of education have traditionally made a distinction between achievement tests and proficiency tests. The former focus on what has been taught according to prescribed syllabus. Former means achievement test. Achievement test focus on what has been taught according to prescribed syllabus. While the latter is proficiency test, focus on what has actually been acquired in the domain of knowledge through classroom transaction. Okay. So first checks how much has been taught as per the syllabus. The second talks about how much the student has actually gained. The achievement test scores normally indicate the extent to which the learner has mastered the prescribed textbooks. Even after she has passed the class 12 examination with distinction, a student may not be equipped to critically examine the claims made by a scholar, propose alternative hypothesis, and initiate a new line of rational inquiry. So basically, author is saying that we pretty well test the we are very good at achievement tests. We are very bad at proficiency tests. Has author given you any solution as to how this can be improved? No. So author is only discussing problem here. Which one of the following statements best reflects the most logical, rational, and practical suggestion implied by the passage given above? So now author is asking, our question setter is asking, what can be the solution for the above situation? Sorry. So it says it is not possible to focus on proficiency test because of the subjectivity involved therein. This is not a suggestion. This is not a suggestion. This is simply saying that subjective testing is not possible. It's not solution. B. Critical thinking and not rational inquiry makes a student more intelligent. Again, this is not a suggestion. Okay. The knowledge acquired through prescribed textbook is not enough to, again, this is not a solution. We need some suggestion as to how you can improve it. So we need some action that someone can take to improve the situation. None of these are talking about any actions to be done. It only is commenting on how big or small the problem is. That's it. So definitely D should be answer, but let's check the criteria for academic outcome must be knowledge and critical thinking rather than good grade. So now here there is at least some action. Change your criteria. Change your criteria to check the outcome must be knowledge and critical thinking and not good grades. So change your criteria of assessing students only on good grades. Check their critical thinking skill as well. So this is a suggestion which makes sense. So D Delhi. Clear? Okay. Give this one a try. Plants could be selectively bred for certain qualities. In 1866, Gregor Mendel's studies in heredity were published in Austria. In experiments with pea plants, Mendel learned how traits were passed from one generation to the next. His work paved the way for improving crops through genetics. New crop rotation methods also evolved during this time. Many of these were adopted over the next century or so throughout Europe. For example, the Norfolk four-field system, developed in England, proved quite successful. It involved the yearly rotation of several crops, including wheat, turnips, barley, clover, and ryegrass. This added nutrients to the soil, enabling farmers to grow enough to sell some of their harvest without having to leave any land unplanted. Most of the world was not affected by these developments, however. Farmers in Asia, Australia, Africa, and South America continued to use old ways of agriculture. So we are discussing new way of agriculture that was developed versus and how it improved the soil nutrition. But other continents or other countries continued to do the old way. With reference to the passage above, the following assumptions have been made. So we have three statements. Let's look at this statement one. The Europeans introduced plants such as potatoes, tomatoes, corn, and tobacco in Asia. I'm not really sure that we can include. I mean, we can assume this in Asia. No, it's not in Asia. No, this is not discussed. By channeling water from streams into their fields, the farmers were able to increase the food grain production in Europe. Again, I'm not really sure. We are basically saying that how the rotation method improved the soil nutrition and thereby the yield. It's not how water was used, or water management is not the key. The key is crop rotation. New agricultural methods have helped increase the soil fertility and production. So this makes sense. So I will mark C3 only. This is what new agricultural method is, basically crop rotation method, and it has improved the soil fertility, that is given here. Where was that? This added nutrients to the soil, meaning soil fertility has been improved. So three only is the answer. Give it a try. It has often been said that art is the reflection of society. This is what someone, a famous French philosopher, let me call him YM. So YM, a French philosopher, was able to defend. Artists are not isolated creators. Their work is the result of their relationship with the outside world. Often commenting on politics, power, or wealth, artists may or may not dialogue with human concerns, which are themselves strongly conditioned by the culture in which we live. Non-Western works, too, such as African or Oceanian masks and totems, derive from this pattern. In the recent decades, the connections between art and society have become more obvious. For example, photography and video began to capture reality, documenting it, staging it, and sometimes denouncing it. Pop art artists have seized on our symbols, and the new generation of artists uses their visibility to denounce, invective, or educate the public. I'm not really sure about what this word means, but denounce or educate the public, we can still understand. Which one of the following best reflects the crux of the passage? So we need something which basically is, you say, that one statement which will convey the overall idea of the passage. Okay. Non-Western societies should learn how to make the best use of art in understanding societies. No. We are not discussing how the non-Western societies should improve. Author is only using non-Western societies as one of the example, is as how are they doing it versus how the Western this guy YM, a famous French philosopher, is doing it. So it's okay. Societies must invest in promotion of arts for the propagation of their cultures. I don't think investment in art is the crux of the passage. The crux of the passage is something that how art has evolved and how artists have evolved over the period of time. So earlier it says their work was a result of their relationship with outside world. Nowadays they have in the recent decades the connection between art and society have become more obvious. So we are discussing how it was earlier and how it is now evolving and has evolved till now. So I don't think B Bombay is the answer either. Artists should always keep away the bias of their own culture to understand the society. No. Author, see, when you say artist should do something, that means what? Author is trying to, let's say, suggest artists to do something. I don't think author is doing that. Author is not teaching artists as to how they should perform their arts. That is not the crux of the passage. D. Just as a society grows, art evolves with time to reflect the realities of society. This makes sense. This is what the evolution of art that the author has discussed. Okay. Next. Education is a journey which gives the art of living, not just the livelihood, which gives the art of living, not just the livelihood. Livelihood means survival. Art of the living, you can say, let's say, a better standard of living. Let's just use that way here. It makes us learn how to nurture our life and be more creative. Education makes us understand our conflicts. Thus, education is not merely learning facts, but it is training our minds to think. Education system must provide opportunities to every individual to learn through experience and should help to develop critical thinking and problem solving skills. So here is a passage where author has discussed a problem here, and then author has discussed a solution here. So this is a problem plus solution kind of a passage. However, in India, the education system has evolved in a completely different manner. Instead of focusing on critical thinking, expressing new ideas, and debating and writing critically on any issue, our students are forced to learn through the rote route. Basically, author is saying this education, how should an education system be? And then an author says that India has gone in a completely different manner. Which of the following is or are the most rational and logical? Is an inference question now. Again, inferences are something which are not directly given in the passage. Inferences are something that is what you understood based on what is given in the passage. So it is not what author has said, it is more about what I as a reader has understood. Indians cannot think critically and be creative. We cannot say that just because Indian education system has unable to prove that or unable to test your knowledge on critical thinking skill doesn't mean that people are not critical thinker. So that's too extreme inference. So not an answer. One way to improve the outcome of education is to include learning by experience and reduce rote learning. I guess this is what author would also agree with. Author says that we have gone on a completely different route, which is of rote learning. So definitely I can infer that author doesn't want rote learning to be there. So reduce rote learning, yes. And include learning by experiences. This is what he has made here when he said the solution to learn through experiences. So this makes sense. So B Bombay only 2. Clear?
हेलो एस्पिरेंट्स, आर यू नॉट एबल टू क्लियर प्रीलिम्स या आपका स्कोर हमेशा 80 टू 85 के बीच में अटक रहा है? एंड इज देयर अ फियर ऑफ लूजिंग वन मोर ईयर बिकॉज ऑफ नॉट क्लियरिंग प्रीलिम्स? Then we have a solution to help you clear prelims with a very good margin. Target UPSC have launched 3 important modules. First is environment module जहां से close to 17 to 18 क्वेश्चन हर साल आ रहे हैं. IRN mapping module जहां से 17 क्वेश्चंस आते हैं. And last is science and tech module जहां से 12 क्वेश्चंस आते हैं. हमने each module का प्राइस सिर्फ 999 रखा है. And these modules are of highest quality, comprehensive, covering static and current in a very crisp format. And हमें हमारे मॉड्यूल्स पर इतना भरोसा है कि हम आपको गारंटी देते हैं अगर आपको कंटेंट पसंद नहीं आता है, we'll give you 100% no question asked refund. That is the mark of our content quality and 100% result oriented approach. To know more about these modules, you can click on the link below or you can call me on these numbers. Thank you.
Next. Ghalib's poem was composed against the backdrop of the decline of the Mughal Empire. His home territory, the Indo-Gangetic Plain, once ruled by a single monarch, was now split between contending chiefdoms and armies. Brother was fighting brother, unity and federation were being undermined. But even as he wrote, a new power was asserting its influence across the land in the form of the British, who were steadily acquiring control of the greater part of the subcontinent. Then, in 1857, large sections of the native population rose up in what the colonists called the Sepoy Mutiny, and Indian nationalists later referred to as the First War of Indian Independence. Some of the bloodiest fighting was in Ghalib's hometown Delhi, still nominally the capital of the Mughals and in time to become the capital of British Raj as well. His own sympathies were divided. He was the recipient of a stipend from the new rulers, yet a product of Mughal culture and refinement. So he was receiving stipend from the new rulers, which I think author means Britishers, yet a product of Mughal culture. So He was still thinking, writing about Mughals, but he was getting paid by the Britishers. That's what I understood, but let's see. He saw more clearly than the British colonial did then, or the Indian nationalist does now, that it was impossible here to separate right from wrong, that horrible atrocities were being committed by both sides. Marooned in his home, he wrote a melancholy account of how Hindustan has become the area of mighty whirlwind and the blazing fire. To what new order can the Indian look with joy? He asked. Basically, he was not happy with what was going on. There was nothing right, there was nothing wrong. Nobody was completely right, nobody was completely wrong. That kind of a situation. So, complete chaos around him, and he was sad about it. So, when he says melancholy account, melancholy is basically a state of sadness. Okay. Which of the following best implies the crux of the passage? Ghalib foresaw the rise of British in India. Can I say that that is the crux of the passage? I don't think so. Uh, if that was the crux of the passage would talk more about Ghalib and more about Britishers and the connection between them. But author has not talked about a lot about Britishers and their connection with Ghalib. There are two separate entities. Author is basically saying that India was facing a turbulent time. A lot of powers were emerging, and Ghalib was not happy with what was going on around him. That's it. That doesn't mean that he foresaw what the future might hold. He actually says, to what new order can India look with joy? That means even he doesn't know what the future holds for us. So, no. Weak central authority gave British the scope of expansion. I'm not really sure, but let me keep this aside. Widespread looting was witnessed in Delhi during the mutiny of 1857. No, this is not the crux of the passage. This is basically a statement of fact. Okay, this is not the summary of the passage. So I don't think this can be the crux. Indian nationalists are not clear in their vision. Again, I don't think this is the crux of the passage. I'm not really sure. B, weak central authority gave British the scope of expansion. Could be true because that's what author has discussed, that how it was ruled by a single monarch, and then a new foreign power was asserting its influence, and then the mutiny, which is against the Britisher, then capital of British Raj, everywhere British colonist. So basically, he is more talking about how Britishers came to power and how they faced the rebellion and all. So I guess B, Bombay makes sense for me. Okay. Give this one a try. All right. So it says a healthy mind forms the nucleus of a harmonious community. Yoga can not only help us improve our mental health, but also help us become karma yogis. A community of karma yogis is one where every member performs his or her duty while maintaining equanimity under all circumstances. Equanimity means a stable state of mind. You are not too happy, not too sad, not too angry. Stable state of mind. Yoga can also spark creativity, which can in turn enhance one's self esteem, belief in oneself, and improve focus. A community of karma yogis could therefore help the world become a more peaceful place. In a sense, therefore, yoga has the potential to spark a revolution that lifts us out of our miseries. Okay. Easy to read kind of a passage. What does the author mean by a community of karma yogis? So what do we mean by that? When all members maintain a calm and composed attitude even under stressful situation. I guess this is what karma yogis mean. So I don't know. Could be the answer. Let me read the rest. People living in harmony with nature in order to ensure a sustainable lifestyle. Harmony with nature. I don't think so. A group of people maintaining the integrity at workplace. Not only at workplace. Author is not talking only at workplace. Author is saying anywhere and everywhere in life, at workplace, at home, everywhere. Author is not talking only about workplace. So no. A community of people upholding rule of law. Rule of law. I don't think so. I guess A is a better option. Okay. So all of these options had something that was not discussed in the passage. So we cannot mark that answer. A makes sense. Give this one a try. Biotechnology has brought advances in animal husbandry, ranching, or raising of domestic animals. Today's farm animals are larger and grow faster than their ancestors. Cattle, for example, are grazing animals. Their digestive systems has evolved to process grasses and other crops. Corn and other grains cause a cow's digestive system to become acidic. That makes it easier for dangerous bacteria such as E. coli to develop. Bacterial infections can be harmful to the cow and can also infect the milk and meat consumed by people. So basically, author is saying how the transmission of bacteria can happen from animal to humans. Antibiotics are spliced into the DNA of feed corn to prevent such infection. Antibiotics have been used since 1950s to stimulate cattle growth. Over time, this practice has led to development of antibiotic resistant bacteria in cattle and people. Many cattle are also given anabolic steroids or growth hormones to make them get bigger and faster. So author is saying even antibiotics are not working because the bacteria have now become resistant to the antibiotics. And then the author says they are also being fed the steroids and all. Based on the passage given above, the following assumptions have been made. Use of antibiotic among cattle should be reduced for preventing harmful effects on the population. Assumption may be true. Use of antibiotics among cattle should be reduced. If I look at this, okay, so anyway, bacteria have become anti-resistant to them, so we can still say that okay, reduce the use of antibiotics. Could be true. Let me check the next. Reduced use of antibiotics will lead to reduction in milk production. This I don't think so is what author meant. So this definitely is not the answer. Use of antibiotics among cattle should be reduced for preventing. Not really sure about this. Okay, I would still mark this because author definitely is not, let's say, not in favor of using antibiotics, or rather is not in favor of using too much antibiotics. Author is not saying that you completely stop antibiotics. Author is saying don't use it too much. Use it, but only to an extent. So this would be fine because this option says that it should be reduced. It's not saying that it should be stopped. It should be reduced in quantity. So I guess this makes sense. So I'll mark A as the answer here. In cities, in high rises means basically taller towers, buildings. Not many of us know our neighbors anyway. Parents might not like cricket, friends might not share our interest in sports. The intrusion of others is probably not welcome by all, especially for this generation which has grown up in bubbles for most things. Entertainment, online studies, social media, even if paradoxically the surfeit of lonely pursuits has reduced the quality of solitude. So basically author is saying that although you are alone, the quality of being lonely has reduced because you are too much into entertainment, online studies, and social media. You don't like intrusion of others. So you are alone, basically lonely. You are alone at home, but the earlier when you used to be alone versus now that you are alone at home, author is saying that uh, the quality has reduced. Quality of solitude means being solo, being alone. Quality of being alone has reduced. Okay, let's see. Which of the following statement best reflect the suggestion conveyed by the given passage? People should avoid living in cities. No, 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 no. Author is not saying that you avoid living in cities. Author is saying that if you are living in cities, it's okay. Author is not against that. Author is against the quality of solitude in which you are living. That is what author is against. In cities, people should become more socialized. Could be true. Let me keep it aside. In search of loneliness, we have shortened the quality of solitude. Where is the suggestion here? The question is about the suggestion. This is not a suggestion. Cities have become a breeding ground for loneliness. Again, this is not a suggestion. B. Bombay is what I would mark. It has been proven time and again that when more women enter the workforce, economies grow faster. When women are empowered, the battle to eradicate poverty is more fruitful. Studies conducted in various nations have proven that there is a direct correlation between greater gender diversity and greater GDPs. We must ensure that all of India's women get equal access to education, equal access to opportunities, and equal pay at work. By empowering women, we increase their right to economic resources as well as their decision making powers. This in turn benefits their households and their communities. Women begin investing more in their children's education, the quality of human capital improves, and we as a nation reap the benefits of economic prosperity. According to author, how can we reap the benefits of economic prosperity? By improving the quality of human resource. This is correct. I don't think there is a problem with that. It says here the quality of human capital improves. So this is fine. By increasing education penetration among both boys and girls, this is also fine because we are talking about children's education, not girls' education, children's education. So both boys and girls is also fine. So C1 and 2 is okay. When physical activity is used as break from academic learning time, post-engagement effects include better attention, increased on-task behaviors, and improved academic performance. Comparisons between first grade student housed in a classroom with stand sit desk. I guess this is stand sit desk, where the child could stand at his or her discretion, and in classrooms containing traditional furniture showed that the formal children were highly likely to stand, thus expending significantly more energy than those who were seated. Okay. More important, teachers can offer physical activity breaks as part of a supplemental curriculum or simply as a way to reset student attention during a lesson, and when provided with minimal training can efficiently produce vigorous or moderate energy expenditure in students. Further, after school physical activity programs have demonstrated the ability to improve cardiovascular endurance, and this increase in aerobic fitness has been shown to mediate improvements in academic performance as well as the allocation of neural resources underlying performance on a working memory task. Author is discussing tons of advantages of having a physical activity breaks during your academic schedule. Physical activity is important in a child's daily life because it helps in breaking the monotonous pattern of life. Okay, otherwise there will be lack of physical development. No, I don't know what will happen if there is no physical activity. I only know what happens when there is a physical activity because author has discussed tons of advantages of that. It improves cognitive functions related to attention and memory to facilitate learning. This could be true because this is what is discussed. Consistent engagement in physical area can help students refine social skills. Social skills. That is a bit of an exaggeration. It helps in breaking the monotonous pattern of life. I'm not really sure. C is the right answer in this case. Give this one a try. Many government expenditures of the privileged classes have escaped the purview of current debate. Okay, so this is the same passage that we read earlier, but the question is now different. According to passage, what constitutes a subsidy to the rich? Expenditure of beautification projects. So he has discussed many expenditures here. beautification of projects, the very act of allocating land to industries. It's not allocating land to industries. It's basically giving land to industries at a highly subsidized rate. So, no. Free education and health services to the needy. Again, no. We are talking about subsidy to the rich. This is talking about the needy. So, again, no. So, one only. None of the above. Had there been an option of only one, I guess I would have marked that as the answer. The impact of climate change is much more evident in Indian agriculture, where around 85% of farmers are small and marginal, and 60% of agriculture is dependent upon the vagaries of the monsoon. Vagaries means variations of monsoon. Okay. The role of irrigation, therefore, takes the front seat. The continued irrigation through traditional practices since the introduction of the Green Revolution in 60s, however, has begun to show its multitudinous ill effects on groundwater quality and height, waterlogging, soil salinity, soil health, crop productivity, partial factor productivity, and cost economics of farm practices. This is where micro irrigation assumes significance. So author is saying climate change has a visible impact on agriculture. Then all of this shows what is that impact. Okay. And then author says, therefore, micro irrigation is significant or important. Which of the following best reflects the crux of the passage? Micro irrigation has the potential to address the ill effects of green revolution and reduce the dependence on monsoon. I guess I would definitely mark this as the answer. Because this is exactly what author is saying in the end. But let's select the others. Climate change has reduced the overall productivity of Indian agriculture. Overall productivity reduction, yes, but is it the crux of the passage? No. So this is where author has discussed problem and solution. Problem of climate change, monsoon, solution, micro irrigation. So when I am solving crux of the passage question, I also need problem and solution, or at least solution. Even if there is no problem, I need solution definitely to be part of the passage, because that's why author has written this passage. So this talks about solution, this doesn't talk about solution. See, this is true as per the passage. There's nothing wrong with this option. But it is not the crux. It's an incomplete option. It's true but incomplete. Second green revolution presents a viable solution. Second green revolution, not discussed. The government should invest more in micro irrigation for its large scale adoption. This is not the crux of the passage. Government spending on it or not spending on it is not discussed here. So A is the answer. Give it a try. Sorry. Violence is always evaluated hierarchically. The physical placed right on top of the pile. Of course, taking away a person's life or dismembering someone is an irrevocable state. But emotional and psychological violence can be deeply affecting and debilitating. So author is saying don't just look at physical violence, look at mental and psychological violence as well. We cannot put a member on it. There is no way to see it immediately or measure the damage. We cannot put a number on it. Hence, we presume it to be a lesser evil. In humanistic terms, how are we to perceive violence that is viewed as relatively benign because it is non-physical? More often than not, the actual physical act occurs after a sustained period of psychological violence. During that gestation period, we enthusiastically participate in its enactment. We also train, encourage, and brainwash perpetrators. We do not speak to him directly, but our nurturing of his psychotic environment is not an accident. We know that our every word and action is a trigger, yet we keep pushing until someone somewhere snaps. Then we quickly wash our hands of the entire episode. When someone points at it, we accuse him of equating words and swords. So author is saying that mental and psychological violence is also damaging enough, and the people knowingly or unknowingly are contributing towards it. Physical violence is the outcome of which one of the following? Physical violence. Prolonged duration of psychological violence. This is true. This is where he mentioned that the actual physical after a sustained period of psychological violence. So this is fine. So this is not an answer. Patriarchal mentality, that is not. We are talking about hierarchy, not patriarchy. I don't think I read patriarchy anywhere. So 2 is not the answer. So I guess C. Lack of timely intervention, yes. During the gestation period. Gestation period means nobody is intervening. So 1 and 3. Give it a try. Present day health problems differ from those with which public health traditionally has been concerned in the amount of individual understanding necessary to prevent and cure diseases or to avoid accidents. Avoiding disability and death from these causes depends on a great deal more on individual understanding and action than did the prevention of infectious diseases. Not every person needs to take specific preventive action to be protected from a communicable disease. For example, if a community, through the action of few of its citizens and its government, installs a safe water supply and sanitary sewage disposal, all members of the community will benefit. The immunization of even a few persons in a community affords some protection to the others. For each immune person in a population, reduces the chance of transmission of the disease. So, author is saying immunization, or let's say preventive action by a few, will benefit all. So, which one of the following statement best reflects the crux of the passage? Now, here again we need problem and solution both, because author has discussed the problem, that how contagious diseases could be bad, but also author has discussed solution, as if even if few of them are aware and do their due diligence, everybody will benefit. So problem and solution, or at least the solution, has to be part of my crux of the passage answer. Government should speed up vaccination for different diseases to prevent deaths. We are not discussing what government needs to do. We are discussing what citizens needs to do. So not A. All citizens should take steps. All. No. Author is saying even if some of you take it, it's fine. Individuals' knowledge about the infectious disease is important, but not sufficient to protect the community from its spread. Important, yes. Not sufficient is also true. So I guess this is fine. Immunization of children is more important than adults. We are not discussing how children should be immunized better than the adults. So I guess C makes sense. Because it says that you individual should know about it. That how their action will basically improve the health of the whole community. So C makes sense here. Give this one a try. Food, agriculture, and fisheries depend on world's natural resources. So future food production will depend on how well these resources are conserved and used. Agriculture is impacted by urban land expansion and by higher water demand from other sectors. Development in coastal zones complicates fisheries governance in traditional fishing areas. The ocean ecosystem is affected by oil and gas exploration, marine shipping, and land-based industries, whose pollution can lead to habitat loss and declining biodiversity. Agricultural risk hotspots occur everywhere. These resource pressures are most concentrated. The food, agriculture, and fisheries system is not only impacted by the environment but also by production techniques. The excessive use of nutrients in agriculture has been a major source of water pollution and is estimated to have reduced biodiversity in rivers, lakes, wetlands by about one third globally. Okay, so straight away passage. Which of the following statements best reflect the most critical inference? Okay, so we need inference, something that is not directly discussed in the passage. We need such answer can be made from the passage given above. Sustainable environmental resource governance is the most crucial factor. Most crucial factor, I'm not really sure. For food security in future, no. Agricultural risk hotspots need to be identified and targeted efforts need to be no. We are not discussing that. Biodiversity and food production depend not only on natural but also anthropogenic factors. This could be true. Okay, so let me just keep it aside. Unsustainable practices in the food, agriculture, and fisheries system threaten only biodiversity. No, author has discussed beyond that. So I guess A, B, D, all of them have some problem. C makes absolute sense. Give this one a try. So it says humankind's fascination with the heavens is as old as humankind itself. Fascination with the heavens is as old as humankind itself. The sight of countless stars and the faint band of light which stretches from horizon to horizon must have been the cause of amazement and awe for the earliest Homo sapiens as she trudged along the plains of East Africa. From the hunter gatherer to our own times, every culture has developed its own cosmology, the system of beliefs or theories which explain the origin and structure of the universe. Which one of the following statement best reflect the central idea of the passage given above? So we need an answer which gives you the central idea. Mankind's efforts to explain origin of the universe? No. That's not the central idea. Author is basically saying that how we perceive nature or rather universe and what believe every person or rather every culture has their own beliefs about the universe. Humans knowledge of cosmology, no, if that was the passage we would talk more about cosmology. No, we are talking more about how cultures have evolved to think of cosmology or think of universe. Mankind's obsession to find out more about universe, this makes absolute sense. The origin and structure of the universe, no. It talks about how people are more curious about universe and theory and beliefs around that. Give this one a try. Scientists are actively debating whether there is a fixed limit to the human lifespan. Some biologists think the data shows that aging is not a disease that can be treated, but instead an inevitable process that cannot be fully stopped, whether through medical breakthroughs or other means. Some demographers have argued that there is a natural limit to life expectancy, implying that maximum ages will level off as well, but others think there's a good evidence that lifespans will continue to lengthen, at least for a lucky few. Several prominent biologists and medical experts have recently published findings suggesting there is some hope for extending lifespan dramatically via medical interventions. Based on the passage above, the following assumptions have been made. Human lifespan cannot be increased. It can be increased, no? It's mentioned there. So author has said that with some medical intervention, you, at least a lucky few, will have good lifespan. It is not advisable to interfere with the natural spans of human. Author is not against that. Author is not saying that you cannot or should not focus on extending your life. Author has not said that. So, B, none.
Hello aspirants, do you know 47% of questions in UPSC prelims are coming from 3 subjects which everyone is neglecting. These subjects are environment, science and tech and IR and mapping. यहाँ से close to 47 questions आ रहे हैं. ये subject बहुत dynamic है. Most of the students are focusing on static subjects जैसे polity, history, geography. बट वो इन डायरेक्ट सब्जेक्ट्स पर फोकस नहीं करते हैं, जिस वजह से उनका प्रीलिम्स रुक जाता है। वी आर स्टार्टिंग अ 15-day अग्निपथ चैलेंज प्रोग्राम, जहां हम ये तीनों सब्जेक्ट्स दैट इज एनवायरमेंट, साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी एंड आयरन मैपिंग 15 डेज में कवर करने वाला है थ्रू टारगेटेड एंड डिसिप्लिन्ड अप्रोच। आप हमारा शेड्यूल देख सकते हो। यू कैन चेक द रिव्यूज ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स हु हैव जॉइंड द फर्स्ट बैच एंड आई वुड लाइक टू टेल यू दिस प्रोग्राम वुड टेक योर स्कोर फ्रॉम 80 to 110 प्लस, क्योंकि ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है यूपीएससी प्रीलिम्स का जो सब निगलेक्ट कर रहे हैं। सो एनवायरमेंट, आईआर मैपिंग एंड साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी का टेंशन छोड़ दीजिए। अग्निपथ चैलेंज इज अ वन स्टॉप सोल्यूशन, जहां हम टारगेटेड फॉर्मेट में ये तीनों सब्जेक्ट कवर करने वाले हैं। हमने इस कोर्स का प्राइस सिर्फ 3000 रखा है एंड इस कोर्स के साथ हम डेली मॉनिटरिंग भी करते हैं, जिससे आप में एक डिसिप्लिन आएगा, एक कंसिस्टेंसी आएगी। वी आर टेकिंग ओनली 100 seats in the second batch. Click on the link below or call on the below number to get more information. Thank you.
All right, here's the next question. Education is a valuable tool for gaining learning and wisdom. Though the books are essential to education, the notion encompasses more than just books and bookish knowledge. It isn't required for education to be only based on books. The most important goal of education is to help people with how to read and write. The first step towards literacy is reading and writing. So now, from education, we are discussing about literacy. How to read and write. Literacy. Education provides a person with endless opportunities for growth and advancement. People who have had an education tend to be calmer and more self-assumed. People who have been educated are disciplined and understand the importance of time. Education allows a person to be more expressive and opinionated. He is able to readily communicate his viewpoints, which are supported by a clear aim and rationale. Education benefits not just the individual but also the community. The most important aspect of education that it goes from one individual to another, then throughout society and eventually throughout the country. An educated individual tries to teach and inspire everyone with whom he or she comes into contact. Education brings one up to speed on technological advancements as well. Well-educated person can easily adjust to technological developments. Education, more than anything else, is a source of hope, the desire for a better life, the desire for a wealthy and poverty-free existence. So basically, author in all of this paragraph has discussed the importance of education, not only for an individual, but how it benefits the whole society. So somewhere around the similar lines is what I need the crux of the passage to be. Which one of the following statements best reflects the crux of the passage? Education is a necessary condition for economic growth. The author is not saying that this is necessary condition. Author is saying it's important, but not necessary. Nowhere has author said that it is the only way in which you can improve and there's no other way in the world by which society can improve. Author is not saying that. Author simply saying how education is important. A person cannot be successful in life without education. Again, we don't know if an uneducated person is successful or not, but we definitely know an educated person has a high probability of being successful. That's what the author has said. An educated society is essential for poverty-free existence. That is not crux of the passage. Crux of the passage is more about how an individual who is educated will impact the overall society, which in turn will help you improve the poverty. So that is a secondary idea. The primary idea is how an educated person improves the overall well-being of the society. That is the crux of the passage. So I guess D makes sense in that case. A well-educated individual is a valuable asset to society. So D, Delhi is the answer. Okay. Today, about 25% of modern pharma, whatever, are derived from plants. So basically 25% of modern medicines are derived from plants. World Health Organization estimated that about 80% of the developing countries' population still relies on traditional medicines, mostly plant drugs, to help meet their healthcare needs. Also, there is an increase in the demand for plant-based products in both developing and developed countries because of several advantages, such as no side effects, non-toxic, and affordable prices. Plants provide the raw material for industries producing pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, perfumes, and flavors imparting biochemical. Therefore, there is an urgent need for conservation, sustainable utilization, and management of plant. So, author is now talking about urgent conservation. Or the reason for conservation, author says, because we need it for the medicinal purposes. To meet the growing requirements of food, fodder, fiber, health, water, and other needs. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. So, this is now the assumption question. Developed nations are mainly dependent on chemical based medicines. We don't know that. We know developing nations are using more and more plants, and even developed nations nowadays are in search of plant based medicines. That doesn't mean that as of now they are using only chemical based medicines, right? So, one is not the answer. Two, many plant genetic resources are getting extinct because of the increasing loss of biodiversity. This goes a little bit tangential to what is given in the paragraph. The paragraph mostly talks about medicinal properties of plants and therefore the need of conserving those. Now, we are not discussing why plants are going extinct. We are only saying, author is only saying that please help us prevent this extinction. Author is not discussing the reasons for those extinction. So again, 2 doesn't make sense either. So I guess neither 1 or 2 is the answer in this case. Give it a try. Next one. India, which will soon have twice the number of internet users as the US, is a large market for all kinds of new technologies. While this presents a huge opportunity, the domestic industry has not yet managed to derive the benefits. For instance, the country is operating far below its potential in electronic manufacturing. Electronic goods and components are the second largest item after oil in India's import bill. Also, the country's imports are almost 5 times its exports in this country. High value electronic components needed in the manufacture of, say, mobile phones are technology and design intensive. Big multinational companies control these technologies and corner the bulk of the revenues. China has used its large market size as a bargaining chip in negotiations with foreign firms. Stay in our markets only if you localize production and share technologies with the local firms. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions and suggestions have been made. Indians have a higher rate of consumption of electronics. Internet users, yes. Consumption of electronics, I'm not really sure is what author is suggesting or is hinting towards, but let's see. India may use its large market size as a bargaining chip for the promotion of its electronics industry. This could be true, otherwise why would he discuss China? So author has discussed China, saying look at, so China and India both have high population, both are high population countries. And author has says, look how China has used that as a leverage to become a technology giant or electronic giant. So in a way, author is assuming that India should also do something like that. So two makes sense. One, Indians have a high rate of consumption of electronics. Consumption of electronics, or we are saying internet users. While the presence of user, so we are low on electronic manufacturing. Sorry. But good and are the second largest item. I can still infer this because it says that we import more electronics, much more electronics than we produce locally, which means to say that our own supply is far below the demand that is there in the market. So we can infer that yes, Indians use a lot of electronics. So could be true. I can kind of read that between the lines. So I think that could be the solution. So 1 and 2 is what I will mark in this case. The story of globalization is the story of the capital's enhanced capacity to flee from the shackles of too much democracy to places that are well controlled under strong regime, where all clearances are available at a single window. Investments move to places where environmental regulations are lax, wages are low, labor standards are weak, and dissent is answered with an iron fist. This was working perfectly until its ripple effects reached the shores of Western democracies. Now the West is waking up to the challenge, and the G7 move is an acknowledgement of the crisis. So basically, now, so there are countries that have very poor, let's say, working conditions, and now slowly the West is waking up to those realities and is now taking some actions against that. So let's see which of the following statement best reflects the crux of the passage. The problem created by the problem created by weak regulations now have global implication. The problem created by weak regulations have now global implication. Global implication, yes, because West is now acknowledging it. Weak regulations could be true because that's where people are unable to demand, what do you say, good working conditions. So A could make sense, but let me just read the other options. Countries under authoritarian rules are favored by investors globally. That is not crux of the passage, because this is not talking about. See, this is an important line here, that Western democracies is waking up to the challenge and are acknowledging the crisis. This is important part of the paragraph. So I need that as part of my answer if I am solving crux of the passage question. This doesn't talk about that, although this is true, but this only talks about the first half of the paragraph. It's not talking about the second half at all. So it's not capturing the essence of the passage. G7 nations are restricting the flow of capital? No. They have just acknowledged. So they have just said, yes, there is a crisis. They have not acted on it. So, no. Globalization has led to weakening of labor standards and reducing in wages in developing countries. Again, no mention of what's happening now, which is Western countries waking up to that. I guess I will mark A as the answer in this case. Give this one a try. Meaningful politics, especially in democracies, is rooted in local organization, discussion, and negotiation. However, the structure of social media has facilitated a perception of engagement without organization and action without consequences. This wasn't and isn't inevitable. There are more thoughtful ways to structure platforms which would help connect and root people in their own communities instead of isolating them locally while connecting them virtually. With reference to the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Okay. Meaningful politics is rooted in local organ. Okay. Social media has disturbed meaningful politics. Can I say that it has disturbed engagement without organization and action without consequences? So, author is kind of critical of social media. So, okay. Physical organization is best way. Best way. This is not the answer. Author is not saying what is best. Author is saying how it was better before social media and how social media has disturbed it. But doesn't mean that what you had before social media was the best thing. No. Again, as I said, best, worst, only, always, however, only, always, kind of words which gives you extreme answers are generally not the answers. So one only in this case. Give this one a try. Ecosystem services, defined as the benefits to human welfare provided by organisms interacting in ecosystems, are considered to be at risk. Pollination by wild animals is a key ecosystem service. Crop pollination is commonly cited as an example of an endangered ecosystem service, as detailed studies of the crop pollination systems are incomplete or out of date. Animal pollination is important to the sexual reproduction of many crops and the majority of wild plants, which can also be important for providing calories and micronutrients for humans. Furthermore, the decline of pollinating species can lead to a parallel decline of plant species. Okay. Which of the following is the most rational and logical inferences that can be drawn? Inferences that can be drawn from the passage. To protect this ecosystem service, holistic contemporary research in crop pollination may help. This is discussed here. Where is that? Pollination by wild animal. Survey says detailed studies of the crop pollinations are incomplete or out of date. That means we need new studies. Holistic contemporary research may help. Loss of pollinator species can have grave consequences on human nutrition. He has throughout the passage discussed why pollination is important. So if there is a lack of it, definitely there will be a problem. So 1 and 2 both. Okay. Give this one a try. The digital divide is associated with negative outcomes. It is suggested that the digital divide may cause technological, immaterial, social, and educational types of inequality. Individuals who lack access to information technology are disadvantaged in knowledge-based societies and economies. Further, e-government is an important means to break barriers and bring government assistance to all its citizens. Digital media usage is a strong predictor of political participation, which implies that a digital divide may result in political alienation of those who lack digital media access. So basically, author is talking about digital divide and what are the negative outcomes. And what is the divide? Is basically those who don't have access or lack access are disadvantaged. So definitely those who have access are at much better advantage. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Building cyber cafes should help reduce the digital divide. Building cyber cafes, will it improve the access to technology or internet? I'm not really sure. Just because you have cafes doesn't mean that people will go and utilize them. So more awareness is required than more cafes is, I would say. Bridging the digital divide could help empower citizens technologically as well as politically. This is true. That's why author is saying political alienation is there and all of that. Correct. So 2 only. B Bombay. Try this one. Protecting Earth's remaining biodiversity and restoring at least 1/3 of what has been lost in the last 30 years is the most efficient and cost-effective step we can take to stabilize the climate emergency. Unlike technological and engineered solutions that are expensive and must be scaled up to be effective, wild nature is naturally in place and working for free, as it has done for 500 million years, to produce everything life needs most to survive. Which one of the following statement best reflects the crux of the passage? Again, I need a statement which kind of summarizes this. So what are the main points that are discussed here? That the biodiversity and restoration is important. Unlike technological engineering solution, we need solutions that are scaled up to be effective to produce everything live. So which basically is wild nature. So leave nature as it is already working and making things better for you, as it has done for 500 million years. Okay. Which of the following statements best reflects the crux of the passage? Humans must align their activities with nature to completely regain the lost biodiversity. Completely regain. No, author is saying even if you restore 1/3, that's fine. Man-made solutions for climate change are more effective than natural. This is against what author is saying. Author says natural processes anyway is improving the environment. So let nature heal itself is what author basically is saying. Climate emergency needs human and nature's intervention for stabilizing it. Could be true. Nature's intervention is definitely discussed. Human, according to question, are expensive and must be scaled up to be effective. So author is not discarding them. Author is not saying that don't have any human intervention. But author is also saying let nature also take care of it. So basically, author is not against human intervention, and author is definitely in support of natural healing of nature. So C makes sense. Governments across the globe should invest in scaling up. No. Give this one a try. The pressing need for an urban employment program should have been obvious from very part of the national lockdown from late March 2020. Urban employment program, which stretched well beyond its initial expectation and damaged or destroyed livelihood, especially of informal workers and the urban poor. But next to nothing was done, and few paltry relief measures that have been provided over the past year have proved to be wholly inadequate to address the massive scale of employment and income loss. The Standing Committee on Labor stated in its report of August 3 that there is an impressive need for putting in place an employment guarantee program for the urban workforce in line with Manrega. Which of the following best implies the crux of the passage? So basically, author has not only discussed the problem, which is urban unemployment or urban employment, informal worker, the way they are suffering, but also solution saying have something similar for urban workers as you have like Manrega. Correct? Manrega, sorry, Manrega. Okay. Which one of the following statements best implies the crux of the passage? Urban unemployment stem from no. Urban unemployment did not stem from a lockdown. Urban employment was already there. The lockdown actually showed you the face of it. Lockdown basically told you or showed you how bad the urban employment or unemployment is. The urban employment guarantee program is the need of the hour. Definitely, yes. That's what do you say? That's where the author concluded it. So, yes, this is the crux of the passage. No measures of assistance were provided to confront job losses. We don't know that. So, this is not the answer as well. Give this one a try. Permafrost peatlands, frozen carbon storing expanse of land in Europe and Western Siberia, might be approaching their tipping point faster than expected, a new study warned. By 2040, Northern Europe might become too wet and warm to support permafrost peatlands, the study published in Nature Climate Change added. Peatlands are a class of wetlands which are ecosystems flooded with water. Waterlogged conditions limit microbial decay of dead plant materials rich in carbon dioxide. This prevents the reintroduction of the gas into the atmosphere. Peatlands, which occupy only 3% of the global land surface, store twice as much carbon as all the world's forests, according to United Nations Environment Program. Some peatlands are buried under frozen ground or permafrost and exist as permafrost peatlands. They are found in the northern parts of Alaska, Canada, Russia, and parts of northern Europe, the researcher said. Data on parts of Canada and Siberia is still lacking. Study-led author Richard Fuster told Down to Earth. Frozen wetlands in Europe and Western Siberia store up to 39 billion tons of carbon. This is equivalent to twice that is held by the whole of European forests. Huge stocks of peat carbon have been protected for millennia by frozen conditions, but once those conditions become unsuitable, all the stored carbon can be lost very quickly. So basically, the whole passage is saying that few billion tons of, 39 billion tons of carbon is stored in the form of permafrost peatlands due to climate change. And this is what my assumption is, if the temperature keeps rising, the frost will melt and maybe the carbon dioxide will be released, which I guess is not, which would be harmful, by the way. On the basis of the passage, consider the following statements about peatlands. They are a type of a water body, yes. It says that might become two कहा गया wetlands are a class of wetlands. What are wetlands? Flooded with water. So this is true. Ice protects peatland from degradation. That is also mentioned. Where is that? See, northern parts of Alaska, Canada, Russia, all are, by the way, cold regions. So yeah, you can infer that ice protects peatland from degradation. It's also mentioned somewhere. I'm just by frozen conditions. Correct. So both. Correct. Yeah, correct. Both are correct. Give this one a try. All right. It says India, which will soon have twice the number of internet users as the US, is a okay. So it's the same passage, different question. Which one of the following statement best reflects the crux of the passage? The crux of the passage was, if I remember this passage, look at China, look at their population and how they leveraged it to become manufacturing hub. India, on the other hand, imports 5 times more than it exports. We have the second highest number of internet users, so very high electronics consumption. And author says that we must also look at our manufacturing abilities and improve that. Okay. Which one of the following statement best reflects the crux of the passage? Union government should trade with the USA not only in products but also in services. Not at all discussed. Domestic companies should invest in human resources to excel in the technologies of the electronic industry, not in human resources. This is not discussed, not the crux of the passage. Despite a large user base, India is not able to scale electronics production due to technological limitations. This makes sense. Big multinational companies should shift their manufacturing base from India to China. No such suggestion has been made in the passage. So C is the answer. Education in India needs root and branch reform, not just tinkering from the top or ideological realignment. So basically, author says, what do you say? Major reforms, not just minor reforms. Not just science and technology, but humanities and social studies need augmentation and encouragement. Deep cognition is not possible without heightened competence in multiple languages, texts, and traditions. We are doing little to ensure the critical thinking, excellence, and creativity are incentivized instead of quotas, patronage, or political corrections. Mostly, we are anti this or that, with little knowledge of either ourselves or the West, which ruled us for so long. As to China or Russia or Brazil, to name some other important countries, we know next to nothing. Outside a small circle of elite services, there is no concerted attempt to understand the world or become better equipped to face it. Crux of the passage. There is an urgent need to improve elementary education in India. Elementary education nahi. Author is saying the whole education system, not only elementary education. India can learn from the education systems of China, Russia, and Brazil. No. Author says you don't even know about these countries. That's why he used those countries. India needs to reform education to tackle the future uncertainties of the globe. Yes. The world or better equipped to face it. So we are talking about global challenges that are facing globally. India should be ready to adapt to those. Quotas and patronage in higher education had made most of our graduate unemployable. No, not at all discussed. So C is the answer.
हेलो एस्पिरेंट्स, आप सबको पता होगा यूपीएससी प्रीलिम्स 2023 में डायरेक्टली 40 क्वेश्चंस वेर फ्रॉम करंट अफेयर्स. ये करंट अफेयर्स के क्वेश्चंस किसी मैगजीन से नहीं थे बट न्यूज़पेपर बेस्ड करंट अफेयर्स से थे एंड हमने इसका प्रूफ भी दिया है. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस 40 क्वेश्चंस, जो नेक्स्ट 40 क्वेश्चंस स्टैटिक सिलेबस के थे जैसे आर्ट एंड कल्चर, पॉलिटी के क्वेश्चंस, इनका भी सोर्स वाज लिंक टू करंट अफेयर्स. क्योंकि एग्जामिनर जब क्वेश्चन सेट करता है, ही डज नॉट गो टू द बेसिक बुक्स बट ही गोज टू द न्यूज़पेपर, चेक्स कि कौन से टॉपिक्स न्यूज में है, उस टॉपिक से रिलेटेड स्टैटिक स्टैटिक क्वेश्चंस वो बनाता है। तो इफेक्टिवली डायरेक्टली एंड इनडायरेक्टली 80 क्वेश्चंस वर लिंक्ड टू करंट अफेयर्स एंड इसका हमने प्रूफ भी दिया है। एंड इन सारे क्वेश्चंस का हमने सोर्सेज भी ट्रेस किया है। इनके सोर्सेस हैं न्यूज़पेपर, डाउन टू अर्थ मैगजीन, पीआईबी, ये मेजर सोर्सेस हैं। Secondly, I would like to tell you we could crack so many questions in Prelims 2023 with a similar approach, जहां हमने current affairs सिखाया था in a theme-wise manner, newspaper-based manner and covering current affairs of 2 years. इसी चीज को ध्यान में रखते हुए we are starting target 140 plus advanced batch for Prelims 2024. यहाँ newspaper-based 2 years current affairs cover किया जाएगा in a theme-wise manner, linking current with static syllabus, जिससे आपकी holistic understanding आए and you can address the question in a effective way. आपका aim ये नहीं होना चाहिए कि सिर्फ एक स्टेटमेंट आपको पता है, आपका एम ये होना चाहिए कि चारों स्टेटमेंट्स आपको पता है एंड यू कैन मार्क द राइट आंसर्स। इसी थीम को फोकस करते हुए वी आर स्टार्टिंग टारगेट 140 प्लस एडवांस बैच, जहां हम करंट अफेयर्स भी कवर करेंगे अलॉन्ग विद एनवायरमेंट एंड साइंस एंड टेक का हम स्टैटिक सिलेबस भी कवर करेंगे। सो इट्स अ वन स्टॉप सोल्यूशन। यू कैन चेक आवर क्वालिटी ऑन आवर यूट्यूब चैनल। आप हमारे हर एक वीडियो देखिए, हमारा हार्डवर्क देखिए, हमारा इंटरलिंकेजेस देखिए, देन ओनली थिंक अबाउट ज्वाइनिंग दिस बैच। द डिटेल्स आर इन द डिस्क्रिप्शन। यू कैन क्लिक ऑन द लिंक बिलो और यू कैन कॉल मी डायरेक्टली ऑन दिस नंबर एंड आई विल explain you details about the batch. You can check the reviews of our students who could clear prelims, not just prelims but forest also through this batch. हम उसका रिव्यूज भी डाल रहे हैं with their proof with respect to their enrollments, उनका रिव्यू डाल रहे हैं, तो आप चेक कर सकते हो हमारा हार्डवर्क। एंड इफ यू आर सीरियस अबाउट prelims 2024 then this is the batch जहां हम एक्टिव वे में प्रिपरेशन करते हैं। आपको वीडियो लेक्चर्स एंड पीडीएफ साथ में देंगे, प्लस 10 टेस्ट लेंगे करंट अफेयर्स पर, जिससे आपका करंट अफेयर्स का टेंशन नहीं रहेगा एंड यू कैन क्रैक इवन स्टैटिक क्वेश्चन थ्रू दिस अप्रोच। सो दिस इज अ वन स्टॉप सॉल्यूशन। थैंक यू।
Give it a try. It says any suicide is a tragedy of insurmountable proportions. For the family, it has multiple ramifications for those left behind. Truly, it is the end point of the collective failure of society. Hence, its prevention begins within the society. Suicides which happen due to coercion and threat of violence are not truly suicides, they are murders committed by all of us. In India, we harbor suicides in our shanties, colonies, homes, colleges, schools, and professional institutions. We love the talk of death as a means of retribution. If we do not want that to happen, then we must raise our voices at every act of injustice, abuse, prejudice, threat, and violence aimed at the ordinary Indian. Which one of the following acts represents us as insensitive human beings, record according to the passage? Raising voice at every act of injustice. Does that make us insensitive? No, that is not what makes us insensitive. Oh, sorry. Which one of the following acts represents us as insensitive human beings? So raising voice is not insensitive. Author says that we must do that. We must raise our voice at every act of injustice. One is not the answer. Loving the talk of death. Yeah, if we do that, then we are insensitive. So 2 only in this case. Give this one a try. For most people, the climate crisis is no longer a future scenario. Floods, heat waves, and wildfires have gripped our entire planet and will become stronger in years to come. Countries in the global south are particularly hard hit, even though their citizens have been emitting the least CO2. Drastic reduction of carbon emissions is only one pillar in the fight against climate change. Many of its consequences can no longer be stopped. There is an urgent need for adaptation measures so people both in cities and in rural areas have the chance to cope with the effects of climate change. That's why several years ago, rich nations committed to supporting low-income countries with $100 billion annually from 2020 to help them cut emissions and adapt to climate change. It was a central promise for more climate justice that has not been kept so far. Okay. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. We are talking again about assumptions here. Through proper adaptation mechanisms and funding, climate climate change can be arrested. Okay. Countries from the global south are not responsible. Not responsible, no. They could be responsible for a teeny tiny proportion. However, they are experiencing a lot more effect. That's what we know. But saying that they are not responsible, we don't know that. No, not such data is given. So 2 definitely is not my answer. So I guess none of these then. UN could help make the rich countries accountable for funding the sum of $100 billion. Could help make the rich countries accountable. Again, we don't know that. UN is not at all discussed anywhere in the passage. So C, none of these. Okay. Again, this is the same passage that we solved earlier, but now they are asking logical and rational inference. India should make provision of longer maternity leave? No. Inference in this case was basically saying that we need more women participating in the working force. India cannot harness the demographic dividend till the working age rural populace finds remunerative. Rural, no. The passage was more about women participation, not rural women participation or just rural participation. All countries with high levels of female level participation have comparatively high levels of political representation of women. We don't know that. All countries. So basically this option says everywhere where female participation is better, political representation is also better. We don't know that. No such data is given. It only says that India is performing poorly when it comes to percentage of women in the working age population. India is facing low political representation of women due to both social and economic factors. This is definitely can be inferred. This was the last paragraph, by the way. Correct. Many of us wrongly assume that board examination results provide neutral assessment of a child's intellectual ability. A low score does not indicate a lack of knowledge about a subject. A student who is an excellent writer, for instance, might struggle to pick the right answer in a multiple choice grammar test. Similarly, it is easy to assume that students who score high in maths are good at processing information, reasoning, and abstraction, but that's not always the case. It is often seen that there is no correlation between memorizing, attention span, and the speed of processing information. Most times, high test scores simply mean excellence at rote memorization and solving multiple choice questions. A board result should therefore be only seen as an additional data point on student learning. It should not occasion value judgment. So basically, author is saying don't judge the students based on their what do you say? Which is board results. Okay. Which of the following statement best reflects the most logical, rational, and practical suggestion? We must abandon the board examination evaluation system. He is not saying abandon it. He is saying improve it, or don't just use it as a benchmark. We should give complete freedom to children to invest in their abilities. No, there's no talk of giving complete freedom to children. Board examination marks should be counted as one of the learning outcomes. Yes, it's just one of the outcome. It is not the outcome. It's just one of the outcomes like many other. For each student, the evaluation process should be different. No, author definitely is not hinting towards that. So C is the answer in this case. Give this one a try. A great transformation can be observed in our daily routine life along with the increasing involvement of IoT devices and technology. One such development of IoT is the concept of smart home systems and appliances that consist of internet-based devices, automation systems for homes, and reliable energy management systems. Besides, another important achievement of IoT is the Smart Health Sensing System, SHSS. It incorporates small intelligent equipment and devices to support the health of human beings. These devices can be used both indoors and outdoors to check and monitor the different health issues and fitness levels or the number of calories burned in the fitness center. Also, it is being used to monitor critical health conditions in hospitals and trauma centers as well. Hence, it has changed the entire scenario of the medical domain by facilitating it with the high technology and smart device. Which one of the following best reflects the crux of the passage? We are talking about how technology is improving or at least help improve our health parameters. IoT has positively affected the lives of humans in almost every domain. Can I say every domain? Health is what I have discussed mostly. With the increasing use of IoT, there is a dire need for investment in online security. No, that is not the crux. In the medical domain, IoT devices can act as a double-edged sword. Where is the disadvantage mentioned? No. Application of high-end technology and smart systems for home health and energy increases the cost of living. That is also no. Should I mark A? Like B, C, D definitely are not the answer. So I can eliminate that. But I am not really sure if A is the complete answer, but it talks at least in a similar tone as what the author is talking in the passage. So I guess A makes sense to me. Give it a try. It says you are what you eat, and similarly, you are what you think, and you are totally what you want to believe. Such is the power our minds have on who we are, what we do, how we behave, what choices we make, how we conduct ourselves, what mood we choose to be in, and we consume by, and how we allow others to see us, accept us, define us, and celebrate or shun us. Which one of the following options best explains who you are? A person's willpower? No. It says you are totally what you want to believe. What we believe, na? How we behave, that is just one part of it. How a person conducts himself, that also just one part of it. But we are totally what we believe. So I will mark B, Bombay, as the answer. Give this one a try. The academic structure worldwide is driven by market values, privatization of higher education, and utilitarian degree programs that produce highly specialized graduates who can quickly become part of a skilled labor force. A general perception is that arts and humanities graduates are less equipped to contribute to the workforce compared to STEM or business degree holders. The pandemic has enhanced this perception, exacerbating a drastic decline of resources, encouraging academic redundancies, and closing down of several arts and humanities degree programs. If anything, the pandemic has taught us that solutions to real world problems lie in a sustained collaboration across disciplines. Not only do we need more arts and humanities programs, but we argue that engineering and generally STEM degree programs must include arts and humanities courses. So, no, author is not only saying that you need increase in arts and humanities numbers, he is also suggesting that those who are studying the other extreme, which is the STEM subjects, should also learn arts and humanities at least to some extent. According to passage, what are the reasons for closing down of several arts and humanities degree programs? Pandemic, lack of interest, perceived low utility of these subjects. I don't know. I think pandemic is definitely discussed. Where is that? The pandemic has enhanced this perception. What perception? The perception that arts and humanities graduates are less equipped to contribute to the workforce. So perceived low utility of these subjects, yes. Lack of interest is not mentioned anywhere. I don't think that has mentioned. Pandemic is definitely mentioned. So 1 and 3. C. Okay. So here is the next question. Give it a try. It says packaging is enclosing the food material in a container to ensure the delivery of the product in the best condition to the consumer for final use. Therefore, good packaging plays a pivotal role in developing the image and brand of the company. So author is saying how packaging is important to create the brand. Intelligent food packaging incorporating nanosensors can provide information on the state of the food inside. It is recommended that nano packaging should be designed in such a way to release antimicrobials, antioxidants, flavor enzymes, and nutraceuticals to extend the shelf life of the food products. There is a need to undertake further toxicological and migration studies to ensure the safe development of nanotechnologies in the food packaging industry. So author is more concerned about nanotechnology usage in the food packaging. Which of the following is the most rational and logical inference that can be drawn from the passage? Give it a try. So first one says including nanosensors in packaging will increasing the cost of packaging for companies. Nowhere in the passage are we discussing about the cost of nano packaging, so I don't think we can infer this statement. There is limited understanding of the use of technology, nanotechnology in the packaging industry. We can infer this because that's why author is saying that we need to undertake further studies. So why would you want to do further study? Because the existing knowledge is not enough. You need more knowledge. So two only in this case. Next, the metaverse has the promise and potential to become an extension of people's lives, opening the door into a parallel virtual reality where people could opt to live, work, and play continuously in real time. In terms of advanced connectivity, there are numerous wireless connectivity technologies today that must be addressed. Bluetooth lacks range, rate, and reliability. Current generations of Wi-Fi offer the required speed but suffer from congestion and high latencies once multiple devices are added. Telecom service providers, technology companies, and policymakers need to collaborate to achieve network enhancements and build an efficient infrastructure that supports 5G and high-end technology like a metaverse. Lowering the barriers to entry for consumers will be critical in making the metaverse a thriving ecosystem. The most pressing matter is providing metaverse-grade ubiquitous connectivity. The scaling flexibility of 5G's high throughput and low latency benefits will go a long way to achieving this, which will tackle the barriers to adoption for consumers. So author is saying that metaverse and all technologies will require very good internet connectivity, and to ensure that telecom technology companies, policymakers should collaborate and bring up with the new new framework that will support the 5G technology and others. Consider the following suggestion made by the author to make metaverse an integral part of people's lives. Providing metaverse grade ubiquitous connectivity, replacing outdated technologies like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi with better technologies such as Li-Fi. Did we discuss Li-Fi anywhere? I don't think we discussed, but anyway. Which one of the above is most rational and practical suggestion made by the author? See, the word here is practical. So we need a solution which is like feasible and practical in nature. Providing metaverse grade ubiquitous connectivity, that according to passage is practical if telecom service providers, technology and policymakers collaborate and build an efficient network that supports 5G and metaverse. So according to author, this is possible. So that's why he is suggesting that. Replacing outdated technologies like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, he is not talking about replacing technologies. He is talking about enhancing the existing technologies. Understand the difference. The author is not against Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. Author is saying that they are not enough to support metaverse grade connectivity. So you need to enhance them. So it's not replacing them, it's actually making them better. So 2 doesn't make sense to me. So I will mark B Bombay for 1 only as the answer. Next. Give this one a try. Poverty is hunger, poverty is lack of shelter, poverty is being sick and not being able to see a doctor. Poverty is not having access to school and not knowing how to read. Poverty is not Poverty is not having a job, fear for the future, living one day at a time. Poverty has many faces, changing from place to place across time, has been described in many ways. Most often, poverty is a situation people want to escape. So, poverty is a call to action for the poor and the wealthy alike, a call to change the world so that many more may have enough to eat, adequate shelter, access to education and health, protection from violence, and a voice in what happens in their communities. There is no one cause of poverty, and the results of it are different in every case. Poverty varies considerably depending on the situation. Feeling poor in Canada is different from living in poverty in Russia or Zimbabwe. The differences between rich and poor within the borders of a country can also be great. Despite the many definitions, one thing is certain: poverty is a complex societal issue. No matter how poverty is defined, it can be agreed that it is an issue that requires everyone's attention. What does the author mean by call to action? Where did I read that call to action? A call to change the world. Okay. Defining the poverty in line with broadest manner. No, it's not only defining poverty. It's actually call to action is basically act to alleviate poverty. So A is not the answer. Bringing substantive democracy, not just procedure democracy. I'm not really sure he's so much concerned about that. Reduce the income divide between rich and poor? No, that is not the call to action. Eradicating material and non-material deprivations of in a human life, which basically means alleviating the or eradicating the poverty. So D Delhi makes sense. Within the freedom to choose are those endowments that make us uniquely human. In addition to self awareness, we have imagination, the ability to create in our minds beyond our present reality. We have conscience, a deep inner awareness of right and wrong, of the principles that govern our behavior, and a sense of the degree to which our thoughts and actions are in harmony with them. And we have an independent will, the ability to act based on our self awareness, free of all other influences. Even the most intelligent animals have none of these endowments. To use a computer metaphor, they are programmed by instinct and or training. They can be trained to be responsible, but they can't take responsibility for that training. In other words, they can't direct it. They can't change the programming. They are not even aware of it. Which of the following is most logical inference? If trained properly, animals can also exercise. No, it's not only about training, it's about thinking rationally and then reacting to a situation, all of that. Animal acts as per their instinct. This could be true. Animals are capable of taking responsibility for their innovative actions. No, this is what humans are capable of. Training can make animals responsible. No. So B, Bombay. Institutionally, cosmopolitan democracy stops short of a fully fledged world government. As David Held notes, a cosmopolitan polity does not call for a diminution per se of state power and capacity across the globe. I'm not really sure what diminution means, but I guess lowering or something is what I think it means. Rather, it seeks to entrench and develop political institutions at the regional and global level as necessary complements to those at the level of the state. This occurs by replicating national democratic institutions at the transnational and global levels, such as the creation of a global parliamentary assembly, international courts, and a constitutional rule of law. These institutions provide a framework to shield human rights and exercise individual autonomy by voting in global elections. Moreover, these institutions are changed with effectively regulating transnational problems that national institutions cannot tackle alone. Climate change, the diffusion of nuclear weapons, financial markets, etc. This particular model has given rise to a long-running campaign on the creation of United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. So Just think of it like why was UN created, or why was UN assembly was created. This basically tells you why it was created, because we needed a global institution. Just the way an institution runs at a nation level, we need similar institutions that work at a global level. The core idea of cosmopolitan democracy is to support and replicate statist democracy institution on a global level. Could be true, could be true, I guess. Let me keep it aside. Promoting the adoption of democracy in every nation? No, that is not what author is saying. Author is not saying that encourage every country to adopt democracy. Author is saying just as a democracy work in a nation, let's have institution that will ensure democracy work at a global level. A position of openness and or tolerance towards the ideas and values of distinct others. This is also true, so no problem there. An identification with the world or with humanity in general that translates local commitment. So this is also true. So 2 definitely is not true. So it's either 3 and 4 and 1 and 4. So 4 is definitely true. So I need 1, 3 or sorry, between 1 and 3 I have to choose. 1. The core idea of cosmopolitan democracy is to support and replicate statist democratic institution on a global. Oh, now I see what's the problem. A cosmopolitan does not call for per se of state power and capacity. It's not about. So it's not about replicating statist democratic institutions, because a state which is not democratic may also come under global institution. So it's not like only the states that have democracy will be represented in UN, for example. Author is not saying that. So I guess 1 can be eliminated. A position of openness and tolerance towards ideas. This is fine. So I guess 3 and 4 is what I will mark in this case. Give this one a try. In sum, the main aim of transport planning is to make the transport sector more sustainable from a social and environmental point of view, while simultaneously allowing tourism to grow. So author is basically saying transport planning is important for tourism. Transport planning and tourism policy have to be integrated to achieve joint environmental and social objectives. So how both are important, transport and tourism, for environment and social objectives. In this sense, it is important to create incentives that reduce the need for private cars and minimize the length of time needed to access specific locations. Okay, so this could lead to substantial welfare gains in terms of pollution reductions and improved access for rural inhabitants. What is the crucial message conveyed by the above passage? Separating the transport and tourism policy will be detrimental. We don't know that. Author is saying integrate them. If you integrate them, then it will be better. But if they are separate, is it better or not? I don't know. So author has not discussed separation. Author has discussed integration. Tourism industry cannot grow without the growth. Again, author is not making a remark on tourism industry saying you cannot grow unless transport grows. Nothing of that sort of comparison is what author has done. Pollution and economic issues of rural inhabitants exist because of poor public transport infrastructure. This could be true because that is the reason why he is saying that improved access, all of that would be better if we need for private car is minimized, length of time to access is minimized, meaning transportation is improved. So C is fine. Let me keep it aside. Socio-environmental development is dependent on the synergy between transport and tourism policies. This is also true. So let me choose between the two. Pollution and economic issues of rural inhabitants exist. Oh, I'm sorry. C definitely is false, because you cannot say that just because of pollution, the cause of pollution is because of poor public transport. There could be numerous other causes of pollution, right? So my bad. C is not the answer. D makes sense. Absolutely. Okay.
हेलो एस्पिरेंट्स, जैसे कि आपको पता है यूपीएससी ने मेंस का रिजल्ट डिक्लेयर किया है एंड संकल्प मेंस बैच जो 2023 के स्टूडेंट्स थे, दे हैव डन अमेजिंगली वेल. We've already uploaded all the reviews of students जिन्होंने क्लियर किया है, बीट वैभव, ओशी, प्रगति, तेजस, शशांक हो गया, पार्थ, लाभ, इतने सारे स्टूडेंट्स ने संकल्प मेंस बैच के साथ मेंस को क्लियर किया है. दे विल बी गिविंग इंटरव्यू एंड द नंबर वन रीजन व्हाई संकल्प मेंस बैच हैज बीन सो इफेक्टिव इज बिकॉज इट फॉलोज द राइट प्रोसेस. जब प्रोसेस सही है ना, रिजल्ट आएगा. मैं हमेशा बोलता था संकल्प मेंस बैच स्टूडेंट्स को, इस प्रोग्राम में वी जस्ट डिड नॉट फोकस ऑन द टेस्ट सीरीज. टेस्ट सीरीज नेसेसरी है. इस प्रोग्राम में 12 टेस्ट विद इवैल्यूएशन है, बट वी फोकस्ड ऑन द कंप्लीट प्रोसेस. इसमें सबसे पहले हमने इंश्योर किया कि आपके कंटेंट पर फोकस किया जाए. हमने हर एक टॉपिक पर स्टूडेंट्स का ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग करवाया, क्योंकि एग्जाम में सोचना ही है. वो सोचने की प्रैक्टिस में हमने करवाई. उसके बाद जो भी टॉपिक मेंशन्ड है सिलेबस में विद रिस्पेक्ट टू मेन सिलेबस, वो सारे सिखाए. उसके अराउंड करंट अफेयर्स सिखाया एंड वी एंश्योर्ड कि वो खुद अपने नोट्स बनाए, क्योंकि नोट्स आर द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग. जितने भी आप 1000 टॉपर्स देख रहे हो, उनके सबके नोट्स होते हैं. विदाउट योर ओन हैंड रिटन नोट्स यू कैन नॉट क्लियर मेंस एग्जामिनेशन. एंड वी फोकस ऑन द कंटेंट पार्ट इन अ वेरी रिगरस वे. उसके बाद आता है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू स्ट्रक्चरिंग ऑफ आंसर्स. हमने स्पेशल सेशंस लिए विद रिस्पेक्ट टू टॉपर्स, जिन्होंने गाइड किया. हर एक सब्जेक्ट के लिए उन्होंने एक स्पेसिफिक गाइडलाइंस दी, जैसे GS3 का आंसर्स कैसे लिखना है, GS2 के आंसर्स कैसे लिखना है, GS4 के आंसर्स कैसे लिखना है. हमने इस पर स्पेसिफिक फोकस दिया. एंड लास्ट में वी फोकस्ड ऑन प्रैक्टिस, जहां हमने डेली क्वेश्चंस प्रैक्टिस के लिए स्टूडेंट्स के लिए दिए. एंड वी टुक 12 टेस्ट which were given with evaluation and along with personal mentorship. So it formed the complete process, and that is the reason why so many students could crack it through Sankalp Mains batch. It is not just a test series but a complete process. मैं चाहता हूं आप हमारा रिव्यू लीजिए. जितने भी स्टूडेंट्स का मैंने नाम लिया है या जितने भी स्टूडेंट्स ने संकल्प मेंस बैच लगाया है, आप उनसे रिव्यू लीजिए विद रिस्पेक्ट टू क्वालिटी, विद रिस्पेक्ट टू कंटेंट. यू विल रियलाइज इट्स अ वन स्टॉप सॉल्यूशन. इट इज नॉट जस्ट अ टेस्ट सीरीज but complete solution. So if you want to complete your mains preparation, then Sankalp is a one stop solution. To give you example of Abhishek sir, पिछले साल भी उन्होंने while working he joined Sankalp mains batch, could crack it with 242 rank, GS3 में highest number थे. इस साल फिर से उन्होंने Sankalp mains batch लिया था for revision and for updates. इस बार फिर से उनका इंटरव्यू कॉल आया है. I would like to tell you, एक बार आप हमारे जो स्टूडेंट्स क्वालिफाई किए उनके रिव्यूज देखिए. सेकेंडली हमारी क्वालिटी चेक कीजिए एंड यू विल सी अ डिफरेंस इन योर प्रिपरेशन.
Try this one. Women are most often the collectors, users, and managers of water in households, as well as farmers of irrigated crops. For example, at least half of the world's food is grown by women farmers, and it amounts to 80% in some African countries. Whereas African women increasingly assume a vital role in agriculture, they remain among the most disadvantaged populations. Easier access to fresh water would improve living conditions for girls who generally drop out of school and start working in the fields and fetching water at a very young age. Lack of access to water is an obstacle to their right to have access to formal education. So, because they have to go and fetch water and work in the fields, they are being they are being that is being obstacle for their access to education, is what author is saying. What can be the inference that can be drawn? Women of the world could be considered as the feeder of the world population. Could be true, but could be true. There's no problem in that, to be honest. Both Indian and African women end up losing their education opportunity due to their responsibility of fetching water. Not all women end up losing their education opportunity. It is few women, especially those who are in poorer areas, that's where this happens. It's not like all Indian women or all African women. You have to make that distinction that only a set of women are the ones who are facing that problem. So, one only. All right, next question. It says, if a man in a given geographical area lacks a job, he is likely to be poor and disenfranchised. If he is poor and disenfranchised, he has an incentive to engage in practices that harm ecology, for example, by cutting down trees for firewood to cook his meals and warm his home. As his actions are aggregated with those of others in his region cutting down trees, deforestation will cause vital minerals to be lost from the soil. If vital minerals are lost from the soil, the inhabitants will be deprived of the dietary nutrients required to sustain the intellectual performance needed to learn new technologies. For example, how to operate a computer, and this will cause productivity to reduce or stagnate. If productivity stagnates, poor people will remain poor or poorer, and the cycle continues. So, because author is kind of saying everything, if a man is poor or lacks a job, he will cut the trees. He will cut the trees, so deforestation will happen. Now that the vital nutrients are lost, there is a lack of nutrition that the humans that the person and family will consume. If there is a lack of nutrition, the mental, intellectual is the word used. Intellectual capacity will not be enhanced. If that doesn't happen, you may not be able to use computer, or basically you will not be able to educate yourself, and therefore a person will remain poor and the cycle continues. So he's kind of drawing a very far-fetched, a very long cycle of events in a small paragraph. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Everything a man does on earth has implications for the environment. Okay, so this is way too extreme, which says everything a man does has an implication for the environment. Here we are discussing only one cycle of how a poor might remain poor. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything that a man does has implication. The geography of an area directly affects the economy and environment of the region. Not only geography. So just because you have a difficult geography doesn't mean that you cannot create, what do you say, source of livelihood. Yes, difficult geography will mean that there would be tough time to get better nutrition, but that doesn't mean that you will never, it doesn't mean that you will never get the nutrition. So just because the geography is tough doesn't mean that you can't get anything to eat. So this again is a way too extreme, neither one nor two. Traditionally, farmers have used variety of methods to protect their crops from pests and diseases. They have put herb-based poisons on crops, handpicked insects of plants, bred strong varieties of crops, and rotated crops to control insects. Now, almost all farmers, especially in developed countries, rely on chemical to control pests. The definition of pest ranges from insects to animals such as rabbits and mice, as well as weeds and disease-causing organisms, bacteria, viruses, and fungi. The use of chemical, crop losses, and prices have declined dramatically. Based on the passage given above, the following assumptions have been made. Chemical pest control methods work better than traditional methods. This is definitely true because it says that it helps you reduce crop losses and prices. Like developed countries, developing countries too should adopt chemical methods to control pests. Is there a comparison like that? Now almost all farmers, especially in developed countries, rely on chemicals. But where is the developing countries? That's not discussed. So I'll get one, and one only is what I would mark. Pesticide resistance is increasing, and farmers and other pest managers' dependencies on chemical insecticides have led to high frequency of insecticide resistance in some crop systems. To fight pesticide resistance based on a knowledge of the genetics of the development of pesticide resistance, several principles must be adhered to for delaying the emergence of resistance or avoiding it entirely. These principles include pesticide rotation or switching, avoiding unnecessary pesticide applications, using non-chemical control techniques, and leaving untreated refuse where susceptible pests can survive. It's very similar to previous passage, but okay. Which one of the following statement best reflects the central idea of the passage? Pesticide resistance can be avoided by following the principle of rotation non-chemical control techniques. This is discussed in the passage, so I guess this is fine. Increasing pesticide resistance could lead to food insecurity in the long run. I'm sorry. Is that the central idea? I don't think this is the central idea. It is not possible to develop pesticide without the knowledge of the genetics of the pests. That's not the central idea of the passage. Biopesticides should be promoted as an alternative to chemical pesticides. There's no discussion of biopesticide. Say is correct in that sense. Let's move on to next. Agriculture is the backbone of Africa's economy and accounts for majority of livelihood across the continent. Africa is therefore an exposure and vulnerability hotspot for climate variability and change impacts. IPCC projections suggest that warming scenarios risk having devastating effects on crop production and food security. Key risks to agriculture include reduced crop productivity associated with heat and drought stress and increased pest damage, disease damage, and flood impacts on food system infrastructure, resulting in serious adverse effects on food security. Agriculture is the backbone of Africa's economy and accounts for the majority of livelihood across the continent. Africa is therefore an exposure and vulnerability hotspot for climate variability and change impacts. IPCC projections suggest that warming scenarios risk having devastating effects on crop production and food security. Key risks to agriculture include reduced crop productivity associated with heat and drought stress and increased pest damage, disease damage, and flood impacts on food system infrastructure, resulting in serious adverse effects on food security and livelihoods at the regional, national, and individual household level. So basically, we are now discussing how climate variability and change has impact on the overall crop productivity, and author has given tons of features of that and what are the effects. By the middle of this century, major cereal crops grown across Africa will be adversely impacted, albeit with regional variability and differences between crops. Under the worst case climate change scenario, a reduction in mean yield of 13% is projected in West and Central Africa, 11% in North America, 8% in East and Southern Africa. So we are discussing throughout Africa what's the problem. Millet and sorghum are the most promising crops with a yield loss by 2050 of just 5 and 8% respectively due to their greater resilience to heat stress conditions, while rice and wheat are expected to be most affected crops with a yield loss by 2050 of 12 and 21% respectively. In the drought-prone sub-Saharan Africa countries, the number of undernourished people has increased by 45.6% since 2012 according to FAO. Based on the above passage, which of the following are true concerning agriculture in Africa? Too much data points are there, so let's go one by one via the options and let's see which one makes sense. Millet and sorghum will witness an increase in production in future due to their greater resilience to heat and stress conditions. They are resilient, that definitely is mentioned here. Yeah. Are most promising crops. So yes, their production will increase in future. So one is fine. Decline in the nutritional value of the crops in the future, that is discussed in the second life after that, 12, 21% and all of that. Likely decline in profits and or employment in the agricultural. Profit and employment is secondary, like that is not even discussed in the passage. Author is first worried about the production itself, then comes the employment and profits. Serious risk of decline in agricultural productivity in the future. Serious risk of decline in agricultural productivity. This too seems to be fine to me. This one is also fine. So I'm getting 1, 2, and 4. 3 definitely is not the answer. So it's either 1, 2 or 1, 4. So 1 definitely is correct between 2 and 4. 2 says decline in nutritional value of the crops. Nutritional value. I guess this is the problem. Crop productivity is discussed, but okay, makes sense. So nutritional value is not discussed. Productivity is discussed. So I guess I can mark 1 and 4. Increase in production in future due to their greater resilience. This one is also fine because it says these are the most promising crops. Oh, even this is not true because the author says yield will be lost by 5 and 8%. That means production might actually go down, but it will not go down as bad as the other crops. So what should I mark? Now I am confused. A decline in nutritional value. Can I say nutritional value? Undernourished people is discussed. So yield is reduced. So can I say nutritional value will also be reduced? So 1 definitely is correct. Now I have to choose between 2 and 4. Serious risk of decline in agricultural productivity in future. I'm not really sure. So I have eliminated C and D because I have eliminated 3, which means 1 is correct. Decline in nutritional value, serious risk of decline in agricultural productivity. Agricultural productivity. Okay. It says under the worst case scenario, which means to say if a lot of things go bad, then there will be 13% reduction. Can I say that is a serious decline? By the way, that is worst case scenario. So a normal case scenario would be less than 13%, which I cannot say is a serious risk. It's too low a number. I'm not really sure. But decline in nutritional value, I can still say that because they are talking about undernourished people, meaning nutritional value might get reduced. So I'll mark 1 and 2. Let's see. Next. India's pharmaceutical industry is at the global forefront as the pharmacy of the world, ranking third in terms of pharmaceutical production by volume. In the next 25 years, India needs to be able to capture a higher share of the pharmaceutical value chain. For this, we need to focus on emerging opportunities across novel biologics, biosimilars, cell and gene therapies, high-end contract research and manufacturing services, mRNA and other new generation vaccines, orphan drugs, precision medicines and molecular diagnostics. With the right kind of policies, the Indian pharma industry will be able to grow from the current $50 billion to $500 billion by 47 and rank among the top 5 countries in value terms and number 1 in volume terms. Okay. Indian pharma industry can achieve the top position in the world by development in medicine made from living organisms. I'm not really sure about that. Did he discuss? Oh yeah, it's discussed anyway. emerging opportunities across biosimilar, cell, gene therapies, blah, 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 blah. Better policies, large scale production of active pharmaceutical ingredients. Yes, large scale production, I don't think I have discussed that. So nowhere they are discussing large scale production. Better policies, yes, because the right kind of policies is discussed. So two has to be there. So can I just say D is the answer? Development in medicines made from living organisms. I think I can still infer that biosimilar sales, gene therapies, high-end contract research, mRNA, molecular diagnostics, that may come under living organisms. So 1 and 2 is fine, I guess. Next question. Farmers, due to dogged work and low profit, shifted from traditional agriculture towards the modern one. Modern agriculture, however, enhanced food productivity, but with the acceleration of several environmental problems such as climate change, food unsafety, biodiversity loss, soil degradation, and environmental pollution. Modern agriculture is a major driver of the loss of crop genetic resource in the third world due to adoption of high yielding varieties and the planting of vast fields with genetically uniform cultivars. Traditional agricultural practices are usually restricted to small farmers. Traditional vegetables grow well in drought prone areas. Traditional vegetable knowledge is under serious threat due to habitat loss, the introduction of new varieties, historical policies, the stigma attached to the use of traditional vegetables, and altered lifestyles. In the context of sustainable food production in changing climate, the adoption of climate smart traditional practices is an urgent need. In the context of sustainable food production, adoption of climate smart traditional practices is an urgent need. So traditional practices which are climate smart, okay? It is the right time to rediscover and re-implement traditional practices to improve the socio-ecological integrity of ecosystems. Integration of traditional agriculture with modern agriculture is a necessity in the current scenario. This integration would bridge the huge gap between indigenous and modern peasants. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Traditional agro ecosystem is recognized as a time-tested model of sustainable agriculture systems. Could be true because that's why author is basically saying that we need to relook at the traditional methods and implement it again, but with a smarter way. Meaning, traditional methods are sustainable because they have stood the test of time. Traditional agricultural system is characterized by high productivity and low energy inputs. We are not really sure about that high productivity part because high productivity is for the modern ways of agriculture. Loss of crop, blah blah blah, high yielding varieties. That is for modern agriculture, not the traditional one. So one only in this case. Next. The internalization of climate risk factors by banks is very much on the agenda, especially with RBI taking up something, I don't know what that means. However, given the complexity of climate risk modeling, the biggest challenge for a bank would be to measure the impact of climate risk while undertaking lending and investment decisions and further integrate the risk into the existing risk and valuation frameworks. According to a recent Bloomberg survey of European banks, most banks reported that they could only confine themselves to a qualitative assessment of climate risks during the loan approval process, which could at best be considered subjective. The quantification of climate risk, albeit crucial, may require quality data that is not always available due to inadequate and at times inconsistent corporate disclosure. The second challenge that a bank faces is a dearth of standardized industry models to embed climate risk into enterprise risk management framework. The third critical challenge is the lack of skilled professionals who have a clear understanding of both the worlds, climate risk and finance. So basically, author is saying that banks have a tough time identifying which businesses to loan. So basically, what there is a some of the banks have a criteria that if a particular business is affecting the climate in adverse way, generally banks will not provide loans to such businesses. However, the author says banks have a tough time identifying which businesses actually are harmful for climate because there is no objective method to analyze the climate risk. There's only subjective way is what author is saying. So what is climate risk according to the passage? Risk precipitated by significant losses or cost of adjustment because of transition to low carbon trajectory. No. Low carbon trajectory and all of that, no. Risk arising from economic costs and financial losses, not economic costs and financial losses. We are talking about ecological loss, environmental loss. Cannot be inferred from the passage. Risk to banks' revenue due to climate change related impacts, not banks' revenue. It is to how much is the business causing damage to climate. How do you assess that? That is the climate risk. So I guess cannot be inferred from the passage. We are living in a world where electronic gadget you buy today is deemed obsolete in less than a year and replaced by another with more advanced capabilities. Smartphone makers, for example, release a new model every year with new features, and for many, not replacing one's perfectly functional smartphone with the latest model is being out of fashion. India is the fastest growing market in the world for smartphones with 27 million units shipped in second quarter of 16 alone. And though the lifespan of a mobile phone is higher in India than in the West, one can imagine the number of obsolete phones contributing to e-West. Based on the passage above, the following assumptions have been made. Indians take good care of their smartphones as compared to their Western counterparts. So India lifespan in India is higher. Doesn't mean that we take care of our phones in a better way. It's just so that we don't have good enough money to change our phone. So we are using our phone for a longer time. Doesn't mean we have a safe use of our phone or we know how to use phone rightly. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we take good care of our phone. Changing smartphones in today's world has become a style statement. This could be true because if you don't do that, you will be treated as out of fashion. So this is fine. India must come up with adequate environmental rules for handling tons of e-waste generated through obsolete phones. E-waste was discussed only as the last line. It's not, what do you say, is the main idea of the author. Author is more concerned about how changing phone has become a style statement. So two only. Robots increasingly operate among people and they now walk alongside us in factories and warehouses, share our streets and sidewalks, clean our homes, and care for the most vulnerable among us. These emerging social contexts add new requirements to the knowledge that successful roboticists need. Many roboticists learn the basics of human machine interaction and usability. Far fewer learn foundational concepts from cognitive science on decision making by human agents, human navigation and wayfinding, human communication, and human interpretation of international behavior that could be used to help robots interpret human actions. All autonomous systems may have ethical impacts, and all should be designed to avoid unethical outcomes. Designers bear some responsibility for their designs, even in a world where the autonomous systems they design eventually design other autonomous systems. Which one of the following statements best reflects the crux of the passage? We are talking about robots and how humans and robots are co-living nowadays. ठीक है? Dependence of humans on robot is going to be the future of human society. It's not crux of the passage. Uh, we are also discussing about how are the ethical impacts of all of it. So it's not only like how the usage of robots has increased, it's also about what are the concerns that are coming out of it. That also should reflect in the crux of the passage. So this, although is true, it's incomplete. It's not talking about the impact. Implementation of robots in human society shall be done by ethical scientists. No, author is not saying that only ethical scientists should do it and all. It is difficult to ascertain the future social context in the sphere of human machine interaction. This is way too broad. With the increased use of robots for humans, the ethical dimension of their design and functionality should be given due consideration. This makes sense. Absolutely.
हेलो एस्पिरेंट्स, आर यू नॉट एबल टू क्लियर प्रीलिम्स या आपका स्कोर हमेशा 80 टू 85 के बीच में अटक रहा है एंड इज देयर अ फियर ऑफ लूजिंग वन मोर ईयर बिकॉज ऑफ नॉट क्लियरिंग प्रीलिम्स? Then we have a solution to help you clear prelims with a very good margin. Target UPSC have launched 3 important modules. First is environment module जहां से close to 17 to 18 क्वेश्चन हर साल आ रहे हैं. IRN mapping module जहां से 17 क्वेश्चंस आते हैं एंड लास्ट इज साइंस एंड टेक मॉड्यूल जहां से 12 क्वेश्चंस आते हैं. हमने ईच मॉड्यूल का प्राइस सिर्फ 999 रखा है एंड दीज मॉड्यूल्स आर ऑफ हाईएस्ट क्वालिटी, कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव, कवरिंग स्टैटिक एंड करंट इन अ वेरी क्रिस्प फॉर्मेट. एंड हमें हमारे मॉड्यूल्स पर इतना भरोसा है कि हम आपको गारंटी देते हैं अगर आपको कंटेंट पसंद नहीं आता है, we'll give you 100% no question asked refund. That is the mark of our content quality and 100% result oriented approach. To know more about these modules, you can click on the link below or you can call me on these numbers. Thank you.
Invasive species may be one of the worst environmental problems facing the conservation of natural areas because of their role in changing ecosystem function. At the same time, invasive species cause much human suffering and economic loss. The approach to eliminating invasive species can be improved by a better understanding of the various types of invasive species and scientific hypotheses surrounding their ability to invade novel environments. Okay. Despite the billions of dollars spent each year, invasive species are difficult, if not impossible, to eliminate after they have been established. Cool. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Invasive species, if not eliminated in future, could threaten the food security of the people. I guess this is fine. Where is that? So, cause much human suffering and economic loss. Could threaten food security. I mean, food security specifically is not mentioned, but it says suffering and economic loss, ecosystem will be changed. Okay. If invasive species are not allowed to change the ecosystem function, natural areas can definitely be conserved. This is fine because they are saying it is the worst environmental problem. So if this is resolved, it will definitely help in conservation. This is fine. I'm not really sure about food security part. I guess I will mark 2 only. I'm not really sure about this. So food security, I'm not sure of. If invasive species are not allowed to change the ecosystem function, natural areas can definitely, my bad, definitely be conserved. That is a problem. So just because you have eliminated the worst problem doesn't mean that the overall problem of conservation is solved and you don't need to conserve. It could be the case that you still have to make some effort in conservation. Just because you have solved the worst environmental problem doesn't mean that the environment will conserve itself. You'll have to take extra efforts for that. I guess both cannot be input. My bad. Makes sense. The death penalty is sometimes justified because of the majority of people support it in the abstract. The Supreme Court, in attempting to determine whether a punishment is cruel and unusual, asks whether the punishment comports with society's evolving standards of decency. The court has been reluctant to rely on opinion polls to measure the standard because poll results can vary widely depending on the polling firm and specific wording of the questions asked. Instead, the court looked at the actions of state legislatures and the decisions of juries, prosecutors, and governors as reflecting public will. The myriad of disturbing facts about the death penalty has led to a sharp decline in its use. Ultimately, the future of the death penalty will depend on whether it is retaining public support. So, if there is a public support, it may continue. If there is no public support, it may decline. And how are they checking the public support? They are basically checking the public support by looking at how the legislatures are acting in cases of death penalty versus uh, how governors are acting, how prosecutors are acting. Based on that, Supreme Court will decide whether to uplift the punishment or continue it. Opinion polls could be a good mechanism for evaluating public trust. No, author is saying it is not actually. Death penalty should be given only by the apex court so that there is no mention of that. State legislature and governors should not influence the Supreme Court's judgment. They're not even influencing. It's not the crucial message. Continuance of death penalty depends on society's opinion reflected through institutional mechanism. This absolutely makes sense. Earlier, the rural always existed in Hindi films. It was a regular narrative trope. Characters from rural areas would always be arriving in the city. Those films created a split between the rural and the urban. The rural was seen as pure and the urban as impure. The rural as innocent and the urban as corrupt. They created a binary between the village and the city. According to passage, which of the following is correct about Hindi films? Now, Hindi films portray only the urban. We are not sure. If earlier they showed rural, doesn't mean now they are not showing rural. It is solely because of Hindi films that there exists a split between the solely. Is that the only reason and no other reasons at all? Earlier Hindi films portrayal, so this one also is not the answer. Earlier Hindi films portrayal the rural as good. This is what is actually given in the passage. So C. All 17 SDGs set the UN General Assembly in 2015 are in jeopardy jeopardy as in danger, due to climate crisis, COVID-19 pandemic, and an increase in the number of conflicts worldwide. 7 SDGs. What is SDGs? I guess Sustainable Development Goals. Correct? The cascading and interesting issues impact the environment, food and nutrition, health, peace and security, as well as education, according to UN statement SDG report 22. Greenhouse gas emissions are set to rise 14% over a decade. The statement noted antithetical to the Paris Agreement plan, a 25 peak followed by a 43% decline by 30 and net by 50. The pandemic itself has emerged as one of the biggest threats to several SDGs. The statement said, pointing at 15 million excess deaths directly or indirectly due to novel coronavirus by 21. Economic shocks due to the worldwide health emergency pushed 93 million into poverty in 2020 alone, undoing more than 4 years of work of alleviating poverty. Which of the following statement best reflects the central idea of the passage? The SDGs cannot be achieved by anyone working alone. That's not the central idea. The SDGs are in danger of slipping away from rich along with their years of progress in eradicating poverty, hunger. This is fine. Let me keep it aside. The SDG targets cannot be achieved by 30 given the challenges posted by. Its author is not saying that it cannot be achieved. Author is saying that it's difficult to achieve. As the impact of cascading and intersecting issues is more on least developed countries, they need to be supported financially. No, that is not the central idea. I guess B is fine in that case. Give this one a try. A history of clothing can do several things. It will introduce students to thinking more about what dress codes and opposition to them, more about what dress codes have done in the past and what they signify. For one, dress code symbolized and affirmed power structures, whether these were colonial, upper caste, religious, or patriarchal power structures. By using their power and even violence, states, religious authorities, upper caste, or even male heads of families could insist that people conform to prescribed ways of dressing. So societal hierarchies were thus sustained and perpetuated. So author is saying that the clothing has played important role in maintaining and continuing the hierarchies. Most rational and logical inference. Knowledge about the history of clothing makes a student understand society in a meaningful manner. Could be true, but let's keep it aside for a while. I'm sorry. Knowledge about the history of clothing will help in building greater civility and respect for differences. This is way too broad. Build greater civility and respect for differences. If that was the case, they would be teaching this in school, right? So it's not. By controlling clothing in society, the state control the power structures. This is fine. So 3 has to be part of the answer. And 2 is not part of the answer. So is it 1, 3 or none of the above? What about 1? Knowledge about history of clothing makes a student understand is fine. It's not a bad word. It will help you understand society in meaningful manner. Yeah, it can. So A. The urgency of reforms in agricultural sector is also felt because the green revolution that led to commercialization of agriculture in India can increase in farmers' income and laborers' wages, apart from making India self-reliant in food grain production, has come to a plateau. That means it has reached its potential. Now it's not growing. In the first instance, the green revolution remained limited to certain areas and crops, limiting its benefits to few regions and farmers. Secondly, the green revolution's contribution to growth in farm productivity has waned and more or less remained static, which results in low income for farmers and lower marketable surplus due to lack of capital and market incentives. So, author is saying that green revolution effect has reached its maximum potential. Now you cannot further benefit from green revolution alone. Okay. Which one of the following statement best reflects the crux of the passage? The green revolution has almost reached its full potential. This is fine. Agricultural reforms through the 3 farm laws were a step in the right direction. Where is farm laws discussed in all of this? No. A well thought second green revolution could address. Solution is not discussed, only problem is discussed. That green revolution is not benefiting further. So what should you do about that? Author has not discussed that. Author has only discussed how green revolution is no more benefiting. Government must focus on improving farm productivity. Again, this is talking about solution. So I guess A is the correct answer. What makes identity politics a significant departure from earlier pre-identitarian forms of politics of recognition is its demand for recognition on the basis of very grounds on which recognition has previously been denied. So basically, author is saying identity politics is actually fueling the discrimination. It is qua women, qua blacks, qua lesbians that groups demand recognition. That demand is not for inclusion within the fold of universal humankind on the basis of shared human attributes, nor it is for respect. Rather, what is demanded is respect for oneself as different. So basically, author is saying you are demanding respect for your own group, which in a way you are saying we are different than others. So you are discriminating with yourself. That's what author is trying to say. Okay. With reference to the above passage, which of the following statements is or are correct? Pre-identitarian form of politics were inclusive and non-divisive in nature. We don't know that. We only know that there is a identity politics that's happening now. Okay. And because the identity politics is happening, which means there are people who feel discriminated against. Now, if there was no identity politics earlier, doesn't mean that there was no discrimination earlier. Maybe discrimination was there, but people choose to speak now and not earlier. So you cannot say that pre-identitarian forms of politics were inclusive. It's just that they were not inclusive, but they did not raise their voice. Now they are raising their voice. So one definitely is not my answer. Everyone has the legal right to recognition everywhere as an individual. Can I say this one is correct? I mean, I'm not really sure. Everyone has the legal right to recognition everywhere as an individual. Okay, so let me ask, if that was the case, then you don't need identity politics, right? The reason why you need identity politics is because you are not being recognized everywhere. So, neither. Oh, sorry. I will mark neither as the answer. Human rights principles inform the content of good governance efforts. They may inform the development of legislative frameworks, policies, programs, budgetary allocations, and other measures. On the other hand, without good governance, human rights cannot be respected and protected sustainably. The implementation of human rights relies on a conducive and enabling environment. This includes appropriate legal frameworks and institutions as well as political, managerial, and administrative processes responsible for responding to the rights and needs of the population. Okay. Based on the above passage, the assumption have been made. Good governance and human rights are mutually reinforcing. We can see the clear distinction. On the other hand, without good governance, human rights cannot be respected. That means you need good governance if you want rights to be respected. So one is fine. It is not easy to realize human rights without proper frameworks, institutions, and processes. This is also fine. This is what, by the way, good governance means. So both 1 and 2. Robots increasingly operate among people. They now work. Okay, so we have solved this passage before. Look at the question. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. There is a need for more learning in robotics regarding the interpretation of human actions. Could be true. This is fine. Sorry. Because add new requirements to the knowledge. So this is fine. There should not be any confusion that ethical outcome should be one of the priority. That is discussed here. Where was that? To avoid unethical outcomes. All should be designed to avoid unethical outcome. So both. While infrastructure is essential for creating safe and inclusive places, we cannot underplay the importance of changing mindsets. There is a need for sensitization of students, teachers, and staff in all educational institutions from primary school to universities on understanding and accepting queer and transgender folks. India has taken a step in the right direction by enacting the Transgender Persons Act, which speaks of a trans-inclusive education system wherein transgender students learn with other students without fear of discrimination, neglect, or harassment. With reference to the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Presently, every stakeholder in education institution is not adequately sensitized. Yes, therefore you need the law and awareness. Why would you need it? Because there are few people who are not aware. So you need to make them aware. So not every stakeholder is sensitized. Makes sense? So one is fine. Before the enactment of the Transgender Persons Act, there was no any act in country. We don't know if there was an act before or not. We only know that there was a new act that came. Doesn't mean that there was no old act or anything. So that information is not given in the passage. The said act will empower the transgender while removing difficulties they face in every sector. The act will not empower them. Just because you have an act or a law doesn't mean everybody is following that law. The act is there. Now you need awareness about that act. People should be sensitized about it. Then only you will see the impact. Just having an act will not impact. So one only is my answer in this case. What do you do if you and your family have invested money in making you a doctor and you do not get enough marks to qualify for a government medical college? Many such students used to settle for a bachelor in dental surgery degree. This led to a mushrooming of dental colleges of dubious quality, and India produced far more dental surgeons than were in demand. Subsequently, several of these colleges shut down. The only option then is to do MBBS in a country that one can afford. A situation of high demand coupled with a student unfriendly system is designed for the entry of middlemen. As soon as you register with a coaching agency or the NEET results are out, you are bombarded with offers from agencies ensuring seats in Nepal, Mauritius, Ukraine, Russia, China, and so on. Parents are lured into spending their hard earned savings by middlemen who paint a rosy picture of the scenario in those countries. Even after these students often fail to clear the foreign medical graduate examination. This has a pass rate of 15%. Caught between parental pressure and an unfriendly system, the students have nowhere to go. Why do foreign medical university graduates have a pass rate of mere 15% in the foreign medical graduate examination? So they are asking what could be the, what do you say, what could be the problem of why there is only a 15% uh, pass rate in foreign medical graduate examination. Is this entrance exam? No, no, this is final exam. Poor quality of education in foreign universities. Standards of education are different in foreign and an Indian university. Parental pressure and an unfriendly system. Let's see, right? That's what is discussed. Pressure and unfriendly system. See. Sorry. The mind is a garden that contains the seeds of understanding, forgiveness, and love. It can also incubate traits that make us violent or peaceful, understanding or intolerant. Teachers help to water the positive seeds and weed out the ones that make us ignorant, cause fear, and stoke hatred. A thinking educator can create a learning environment filled with compassion. Consider the following statements. The role of a teacher is to inculcate the values of tranquility and comprehension. Tranquility. It can also inculcate the values of tranquility and comprehension. Uproot traits of aggression and bigotry. Create a learning environment of indifference. Filled with compassion is fine. So, indifference and it says compassion. So, I guess this doesn't make sense. Uproot traits of aggression and bigotry. Weed out the ones that make us ignorant, cause fear, and stoke hatred. So, stoke hatred would be aggression, make us ignorant could be bigotry. So, this is fine. Inculcate the values of tranquility and comprehension. Tranquility will be opposite of violent. Comprehension is basically understanding. So weed out the root of being ignorance. So comprehension is there. Tranquility is opposite of being violent. Cause fear, which is again opposite of that is tranquility. So can I infer this? 1 and 2. Okay, let's mark 1 and 2. Atmospheric ozone has two effects on temperature balance of the earth. It absorbs solar ultraviolet radiation which heats the stratosphere. It also absorbs infrared radiation emitted by the earth's surface, effectively trapping heat in the troposphere. Therefore, the climate impact of changes in ozone concentrations varies with the altitude at which these ozone changes occur. The major ozone losses that have been observed in the lower stratosphere due to human produced chlorine and bromine content gases have a cooling effect on Earth's surface. Okay. On the other hand, ozone increases are estimated to have occurred in the troposphere because surface pollution gases have a warming effect on Earth's surface, thereby contributing to the greenhouse effect. So basically, we are discussing ozone layer depletion and uh, the effect of greenhouse gases on the ozone layer. Which of the following is most rational logical inferences that can be drawn? Climate impact of ozone changes is majorly seen in troposphere. No, it's not majorly seen in troposphere. It could be seen in other spheres as well. We don't know that. Stratospheric and tropospheric ozone losses affect the temperature balance of the earth. This is fine. This we can infer. Affects the because warming effect, which means rise in temperature. So 2 only is fine. Okay. So again, this passage we have solved before, reduction of yield and all. So based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Negative consequences of climate change are concentrated in West and can I infer that it's only in West and Central Africa? No. Everywhere there is a 13% there, but then there is 11% in North and 8% in East and Southern. So everywhere there is a problem. Coastal degradation is major challenge in Africa and this is expected to worsen due to rise in the sea level. That's only one of the problem. Plenty others that are discussed. D Delhi. None of the assumptions are.
Hello aspirants, do you know 47% of questions in UPSC prelims are coming from 3 subjects which everyone is neglecting. These subjects are environment, science and tech and IR and mapping. यहाँ से close to 47 questions आ रहे हैं. ये subject बहुत dynamic है. Most of the students are focusing on static subjects जैसे polity, history, geography, but वो इन dynamic subjects पर focus नहीं करते हैं जिस वजह से उनका prelims रुक जाता है. We are starting a 15-day अग्निपथ challenge program जहाँ हम ये तीनों subjects that is environment, science and technology and IR and mapping 15 days में कवर करने वाला है थ्रू टारगेटेड एंड डिसिप्लिन्ड अप्रोच. आप हमारा शेड्यूल देख सकते हो. यू कैन चेक द रिव्यूज ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स हु हैव जॉइंड द फर्स्ट बैच एंड आई वुड लाइक टू टेल यू दिस प्रोग्राम वुड टेक योर स्कोर फ्रॉम 80 टू 110 प्लस, क्योंकि ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है यूपीएससी प्रीलिम्स का जो सब निगलेक्ट कर रहे हैं. सो एनवायरमेंट, आईआर मैपिंग एंड साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी का टेंशन छोड़ दीजिए. अग्निपथ चैलेंज इज अ वन स्टॉप सोल्यूशन जहां हम टारगेटेड फॉर्मेट में ये तीनों सब्जेक्ट कवर करने वाले हैं. हमने इस कोर्स का प्राइस सिर्फ 3000 रखा है एंड इस कोर्स के साथ हम डेली मॉनिटरिंग भी करते हैं जिससे आप में एक डिसिप्लिन आएगा, एक कंसिस्टेंसी आएगी. वी आर टेकिंग ओनली 100 सीट्स इन द सेकंड बैच. क्लिक ऑन द लिंक बिलो और कॉल ऑन द बिलो नंबर टू गेट मोर इन्फॉर्मेशन. थैंक यू.
The idea of initiating cultural exchange programs was first hatched after Second World War when the people of different countries wanted to unify against violence and hate among nations. The concept is essentially a process that involves a two-way transfer of an individual to a different country from their home country to promote their home country's values and culture and imbibe the visiting country's traditions and way of life. It is a method of improving relations amongst nations wherein they can respect and understand the needs and values of other nations in the world. Basically, exchange of culture, which increases the probability of desired relation of trade and commerce. That would, so if you exchange culture, that would result in trade and commerce relation, as well as political relations due to the attraction that this concept garners. Which of the following statement best reflects the central idea of the passage? Cultural exchanges can contribute to the development of a peaceful unilateral world. That is not central idea. Central idea is different. Cultural exchange became a necessity for developing nations. Necessity? No. Cultural exchange program help in wholesome development of an individual and strengthen international relation. Wholesome development is fine because then I can say because political relations are improving, trade commerce is also improving, so C is fine. In the post Second World War period, cultural diplomacy gained significance to solve existing disputes between the nations. No, it's, I mean, the cultural exchange is not only limited to resolve the existing disputes, it is also to develop trade and commerce relation. So, C is the answer in that case. Give this one a try. A good foreign policy must work for you all. Your everyday needs from the world must be better met. And since we are collective as a country, our national security must be ensured. As that is done, the pursuit of our aspirations must be facilitated. The foreign policy being the link to the outside, it should enable us to draw what we seek. This could be in terms of technology or capital, best practices, or even work opportunities. And obviously, we would like to be strong, we would like to look good, and we would like to feel appreciated. Any policy which ensures all these goals has a lot going for it. It does not necessarily have to sound nice, it must simply pass the smell test. Consider the following, assuming the author is talking about Indian context, which of the above things can be part of good foreign policy? Poverty reduction, yes. More H1B visas. H1B visas is basically work visas. So I guess this is fine. Work opportunities is discussed. Continuous supply of crude oil. This is also fine because your everyday needs must be met. So oil is a everyday need. Innovative ways of school education. Technology or capital. Okay, so I think innovative ways of school education could be true. Innovative way of school education. Increased foreign indirect investment. Increased foreign investment, yes, that is true. A missile deal with Russia. Will that be fine? Yeah, it will be for security, so this would be fine. Innovative ways of school education. So I need 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So what D Delhi is the answer. So it means 4 is also part of my answer. 4 is part of 3 answers. Innovative ways of school education. Okay, so if I just do school education as everyday need, then it is okay. One, two, three, four, five, six. Various factors help people in believing that people from different countries hold different values. Such factors are cognitive, social learning, and stereotyping processes. Example, illusory correlation may lead us to encode other groups' characteristics in ways that magnify the difference between groups. More relevant, however, is the nature of the concept of the value itself. Specifically, as abstract ideal value subsume a wider range of behaviors as exemplars of the concepts. I didn't understand. Specifically, as abstract ideals, values subsume a wide range of behaviors, okay, as exemplars of the concepts. People may perceive differences between social groups because of the differences between groups in the specific behaviors that are seen as exemplars of different values, even if other behaviors that are exemplars of the values do not differ. So just because two groups of people are same in, let's say, 9 out of 10 aspect, but they are different in, let's say, one aspect, then we believe that they are different than us. Thus, by thinking about groups in terms of concrete instances, differences may be stronger than similarities. In other words, people in different social groups may endorse the same values but associate different behaviors with them. For example, the value of equality may be linked to comparisons between men and women in countries where gender equality is promoted, but not in countries where gender equality is not part of the political agenda. So both, suppose two countries, both of them want gender equality. One country is suffering from gender inequality, so they need policies that ensure gender equality. So that's, let's say, country A. Country B will not have any gender equality policy. Why? Because there is no gender inequality in the country. So just because if I compare the policies of two countries, A will have gender equality policy, B will not have the policies. I cannot infer that both of them are different countries. Why? Because both of them are actually striving for gender equality. Country A is yet to reach that position, so they have policies like that. Country B, on the other hand, has already become gender equal, so they don't need policies. However, both the countries still have the aim of having a gender equal country. Which of the following is or are most rational logical inferences that can be made from the passage? Okay. Understanding group behavior may not help in understanding their values. This is correct. Just because you are looking at policies, you will not be able to conclude whether that country is gender equal or not. Specific behaviors of groups and their group values have a simple linear relationship. Simple linear relationship. No, I don't think that is correct. Simple linear relationship means if one is increasing, other is also increasing in the same manner. So neither is what I would mark. Okay, next. Asian cosmopolitanism had developed in regions which have to be accommodate not just diversities but radical diversities that may prove to be dangerous if they are brought together in the same space. To accommodate these differences and peculiarities in the practices of different communities, everyday mechanisms of coping have evolved. This has resulted in a unique form of cosmopolitanism where differences can be accommodated without pressuring members of one community to be like the other based on notion of universal brotherhood. On the contrary, members of one community can go to extraordinary lengths to help members of the other community maintain their customary practices, including their separate dining and dietary habits. Which of the following statement best reflects the central idea of the passage? Asian cosmopolitanism teaches the people to accept the radical differences among themselves while promoting the community's feeling at the same. Members of community can this is fine. Asian cosmopolitanism is resulting in blending of diverse cultures into one common national identity. No. Asian cosmopolitanism teaches the people to divest of all prejudices so that they can emerge as unbiased citizens of nation state. No. Asian cosmopolitanism leads to a superficial form of tolerance of diversity. Nah. Superficial form. No. It is actually reality. So A. Okay. I guess with this we have solved how many? 75 questions. Okay. So I guess we can stop here for now. Do let us know in the comment. So this document, if you see, it has, if I just go to, if I go to page what, 200. Yeah. So this is the last page. So I have somewhere about 200 questions. Okay. So I have solved 75 questions in this video. Do let me know in the comments, and if many of you want, I will upload the video for rest of the questions. Do share it, like it. If I get 5,000 likes, I will upload the next video. So take it as a target, or just let me know in the comment. Okay. I hope you like it. This is the only practice you will need. The way I solve the questions, you just kind of follow that, and perhaps just by English marks, you will be able to clear the cutoff in CSAT. So don't go anywhere else. Just watch these videos and watch the complete video, by the way, in order to understand the nitty-gritties of how to solve the questions in CSAT. Okay. With that, let's stop here for this video, and we'll meet you in the next video. Have a happy learning.